is not a test. This is reality.
It's the weekend, and we are going beyond the strange with host Dave Cruz on Spaced Out Saturday Nights.
Dave's a killer! Yeah! Dave's a killer! Dave's a mess.
You can follow Dave on Twitter at StrangeDave70. Hit him up on Skype, Strange Days 2015. And you can follow Dave on our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Life is gonna ride away in time. We turn to metal, turn to stone, it's a grand design. Amazed of petrified hearts and I'm lost inside. We all self-destruct, love is to deny. And that is life.
The probability is low, but the discoveries of the Kepler mission suggest that there are billions of habitable planets in our galaxy alone. And there are at least 100 billion galaxies in the visible universe. So it seems likely that there are others out there.
Now, get your tinfoil hats on tight as Spaced Out Saturday with Dave Cruz begins right now.
You're here to turn me inside out and then turn me away. For all my life I choke on clouds of savior smoke until my blackened soul was burning away. And every speck of life is gonna rot away in time. Return to mother, turn to stone, it's a grand design. Amazed of petrified hearts and I'm lost inside. We all self-destruct, love is to deny.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Saturday Night. I am your fill-in host, Joe Roop, and it's good to have you with us. It's great to be here. I'm honored to be here, filling in for Dave Cruz on this Saturday, November the 11th, into Sunday, November the 12th. Let's keep Dave in our thoughts as he's enjoying himself with his family. And it's a privilege to be here. Now, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, we hope you had a great day. We are live right here in the natural state just below the foothills of the Ozarks. Don't forget, Spaced Out Radio is here for you 7 nights a week. Now, let's welcome everyone listening on our terrestrial stations. WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and KTLK, thefringe.fm. Now, like our music? Then rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Now, also, you can check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. And now you can also follow me on Twitter as well, and that's at Lighting the Void if you want to follow me. And subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio, not Spaced Out Radio Show, if you will, please. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the USA. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download the shows from iTunes as well. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you go to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of Spaced Out Radio. Now, if you want to take part in the show, sign into one of the chat rooms on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, and on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. If you're on Twitter, just go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and I will get to your questions in there as well. And if you head over to the website for just $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. And as of right now, you can go to the Spaced Out Radio store and pick up a T-shirt, poster, or an SOR sticker. Now, we also have the Encounter online that deals with everything paranormal, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out the latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Tim Doyle from UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV also have some great videos viewing there as well. Now, tonight we will be discussing what's known as the Western Initiatic System. Now, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this, but this includes societies and teachings such as Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and also what really is the Illuminati. Is there a new world order? I mean, what's really going on inside this ancient mystery we call the initiatic path? Is the infiltration of dark sex forces or societies a real thing? Now, the first part of the show, I have with me Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show that airs on a website. It airs on his website, thesecretteachings.info, and on thefringe.fm as well every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Ryan is going to be with us. He's here with us now. And the second part of the show, Leo Zagami is going to join us from Rome and discuss what he feels what's happened to the Western Initiatic System, the infiltration of it. So we're going to have him on as well. Now, Ryan is a fellow seeker, and he's passionate about these subjects as well, and he's going to join us for the first part. Ryan, it's awesome to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Joseph. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing fantastic. I'm here on a Saturday night with the Spaced Out Radio crew for the first time, wearing the big top hat and, putting this thing on for everybody. So it's kind of cool. It's the first time I've ever done a 3-hour show, though, so I'm a little kind of nervous about it, but I'm also excited because it's fun. It's Saturday night, and we get to kick back and talk about this stuff and really dig into it, get down to the truth of things.
Fun is part of the key. Laughing in the face of darkness, dissipating that darkness with a little bit of laughter. Such a big key to all of this.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy, man, is when we picked up your show on the Fringe.fm, I was thinking, this is a great show, right? And I got an email last night that said, well, I don't know about Ryan. I think Ryan doesn't, he doesn't like magic and mysticism, and he's against magic and everything. And I was like, really? Have you ever really listened to a show? Because it's totally the opposite,
I was just about to say that. It's exactly the opposite. In fact, today I performed a magical act. Do you know what I did, Joseph?
What's that?
I told somebody to have a nice day.
That's pretty magical.
It's very magical, and it plays on the imagination, and subconsciously that person might actually have a better day because I wish them have a good day. That's right. That's an act of magic. That's a form of magic. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yeah. And I was listening to your show earlier, and earlier today, and it was fascinating how you were taking some of the movies that we watch and some of the shows we watch, like Stranger Things. Now, just to let you guys know, there may be a few spoilers in here as we go along with this, but it's going to get pretty interesting. Now, my whole thing about this is there's a lot of stuff going on in the media. If you look at mainstream media, big shows like InfoWars and stuff, you hear this all the time. This black magic, occult, Satanism stuff, yada, 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 right? Now, we have friends, listeners, hosts, everybody that I trust and hold dear to my heart, psychics, things of that nature that I'm afraid are going to get dragged through the mud with this because of certain things that are actually going on or things that people say that are going that may not be necessarily true. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. I think I have a pretty decent example. I mentioned it on the Secret Teachings earlier today, and I can give it to you if you'd like it.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
So I did a show a long time ago when I did college radio, and I was always fascinated, as I still am, and a lot of people are, with Egypt, Egyptian symbols, mythology. And I was sitting and thinking in studio, and I was just off the top of my head. I used to do the show at 6 in the morning, so I didn't prepare anything. I just usually stayed up all night thinking. And I went in and I sat down and I started talking about Egyptian myths and the curses in Egypt that were placed on tombs to deter grave robbers. Just the idea of a tomb curse. And so I thought about it, and there's these two extremes with this or any other type of story where people will either believe that, yes, curses are real, magic is real, but they'll believe it in a very hyped, sensational, extreme way where there's no causation for the magic. It just happens. And then you have the other extreme that would deny even the symbol of magic, that there's nothing that could possibly occur without some type of action beforehand. But we have to sort of get out of that kind of, not sort of, we have to get out of that kind of thinking to understand these types of things. And maybe that's why the listener who messaged you earlier was somewhat confused, because I don't, and I know you don't either. I've had you on the show many times. I don't like to go into the two extremes where we either deny it or we accept it. So if you look at curses in Egypt, curses are absolutely real. It's just a matter of what exactly is a curse. Because if you were to say a curse is simply a magician, let's say a magician, making some poison and putting that poison into somebody's food, and knowing that that poison takes 72 hours to activate and kill the person, that person sits down to eat. It's in a public setting. The magician, the sorcerer, comes up and says, "You're going to die in 3 days." And everybody just, maybe he's crazy, they think, but then the guy dies in 3 days, and all of a sudden that magician now, that sorcerer perhaps, has a lot of power. But why did he do this? How did he do this? He did it by understanding herbs, by understanding science, by understanding basic components of chemistry. And that's not because he was tapped into some dark force. It was because he was a student of nature. Maybe you don't want to use it to kill somebody, but you can use that example in the sense of maybe preserving a virus or some type of bacterium, putting that in the tomb, sealing the tomb, and then when somebody opens it, whether they're Europeans, they're Egyptians, somebody opens the tomb 100 years, 1,000 years from now, they're going to have a body chemistry and a body type that is not going to be a body that's not able to handle, let's say, or be completely, unable to deal with a virus or something that's been secluded like this, like something you might find in Antarctica. And then people start, and there's tons of stories about this, people start to drop dead left and right from excavations, whether they're robbers or not.
Yeah, and it always looks like a coincidence, too. It doesn't.
Always looks like a coincidence.
Yeah, it's never a magic wand and something, poof, and just happens. It's never like that. It's always a coincidence.
That's the extreme, Joseph, is it not? It's like it's either a magic wand or magic doesn't exist. But what I'm saying, it's more like Arthur C. Clarke. And we could include the study of nature in this. Any sufficiently advanced technology, including the understanding of nature and herbs and things like that, is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah, and that's it's all the same thing, really. I believe that as well. But like I was telling Dave Scott last night, the more that I'm learning about this from all the guests I've talked to and listeners and everyone, that this ancient teaching has been going on for such a long time, and it's really cool that nowadays all of the information as far as Freemasonry, especially the Western, I would say the Western occult or initiatic system, is out there for you to study. Now, the only practice that I would say that I haven't totally wrapped my head around is alchemy, because everybody thinks they understand it, but I still believe to this day, and we're going to have Leo on later in the program, that the truest form of alchemy is super high magic, and it's actually orally handed down from what I understand. There's mind alchemy and spiritual alchemy. Then they have puffer alchemy, where they're actually working in the lab. But then there is true hermetically sealed alchemy, which actually lies in the resurrection story. And you talk about that a lot.
Yeah, the resurrection story. It's one of my favorites, and it plays actively on the imagination. It's sort of has that Joseph Campbell spin to it. And you find that in countless movies and TV shows and books, comics, because that is a theme that is just embedded. It's the essence of the secret teachings of magic, of alchemy. You see that in Stranger Things. I mentioned when we were talking earlier, and if anybody listened to the secret teachings earlier, when we broadcast the show live, we called it Montauk Things, because the show was based off the Montauk Project, along with remote viewing, MK Ultra. But there was more than just a government or some corporate or some personal magician who wanted to perform a ritual like Aleister Crowley or Jack Parsons in the Babylon working. I guess we call it. It's like a ritual. It wasn't really a project. It was a ritual more so. And whether or not it was coming from a government or just some private citizens per se, trying to open portals to other dimensions, there's a whole other level to this where it's not necessarily a literal portal, but there's that metaphor of the rebirth. there's that symbol of the rebirth. And one of the main characters, 11, who's this child who has these psychic abilities, who was
Here
kidnapped.
comes the spoilers, folks.
Here come the spoilers.
This is important. I really want you guys to hear this because this is fascinating. Go ahead. I'm not going to interrupt you anymore. I just wanted to give the spoiler alert.
No, it's okay. I have autism when it comes to things like that, literally. So it doesn't come to my brain that that's the case. Don't say anything about autism because I actually have been diagnosed with it. I don't get those things.
I've got a cousin that has autism. I understand.
So I'm glad that you got to be there to kind of support me in that way, Joseph, because I'll just ramble off the spoilers. So there's this character named 11, and she has these abilities, and she has really short hair. And for the first couple episodes, I thought she was a he. I thought it was a boy, and she sacrifices herself at the very end of the first season. She kills this creature that had been brought through from this other dimension, the upside down inverted world, or the world of the archons and the demiurge, and you get the demigorgon from that. Gorgons are from Greek mythology, classical mythology, the earth dwellers. And so she sacrifices herself. You think she's dead, and then the second season starts, and she's alive, but she's got longer hair now. So she went almost from the image of a boy to the image of a girl, and when she's resurrected, she walks through a portal back into our world, and the portal is classically shaped like a vagina. And that same symbolism, and you even can look into the directors, the art directors, the people that did the movie Pan's Labyrinth. They specifically designed the tree, and you see that tree in the cover art and also in the movie. It's a big iconic symbol. The tree that the character Ophelia goes into to retrieve the key of alchemy, rebirth, resurrection, and she crawls out of the tree. They even have the branches shaped like ovaries, and she comes out free, and she's reborn again. She's covered in the birthing fluid. They even have a scene in Stranger Things in the first season where a portal opens up inside of a tree, just like Pan's Labyrinth. So you start to find these connections. It's not just in Stranger Things. It's not just in TV shows that are more geared towards adults. It's in movies that are geared towards children, like Monsters Incorporated. Monsters come into our world through portals. They scare children. They take the fear. They use it to power their world. What is this in the monster world? It's the power company. In Stranger Things, what organization is behind opening the portal, even if it's an accident? The Department of Energy.
Yeah, or some kind of government organization.
It's the Department of Energy specifically, and they're the same ones in the X-Files where they have an alien, the one episode where Mulder goes down into the bowels of the Department of Energy. So you find these correlations, Joseph, and you realize that you're watching something more than a TV show, and it's giving you a lot of very powerful information, whether it's hermetic, Kabbalistic, or whether it's simply well-documented private government military experiments that were carried out using children. And it gives you that information in a watered-down form that makes it more palpable.
Yeah, and you know what else is fascinating about that? The number 11, right? They gave the girl the number 11, and if anybody studies Kabbalah, which we're going to talk about that a little bit, the Hermetic Western teachings include things like astrology, tarot, Kabbalah, alchemy, transmutation, things like that. But on the Tree of Life, there's a hidden of what's called Sephiroth, right? If you look at a diagram, they're little balls, and they represent dimensions on the conscious sphere of the tree. But there's a hidden one called Da'ath, right? Which is the key, or is the doorway to the abyss, to the upside down world, right? That's even in Leo's book, believe it or not. I was reading Leo's book talking about that number 11 as you were talking about it on the show today. Now, that's a little bit of synchronicity.
It absolutely is. I go through that on a daily basis. It's beautiful. I think we all do, really, if we pay attention to it.
Yeah, so 11 is the actual portal on the tree. And she opens up the upside down world, but not on purpose, but because of government involvement trying to mess with energy. I mean, how beautiful is this, right? And, I don't know that they didn't mean to do it, but anytime you do things, and I think for those purposes to gain power, especially when it comes to knowledge instead of enlightenment, guess what you unleash? They unleash the clip-off, the bad stuff, the Lovecraftian type figures that come out of the abyss,
They open Pandora's box, and also you could play around with the numbers. 11 is 1 plus 1, that's 2. And so 1 and 1 are hypothetical individual forms, male, female, active, passive, black and white. You unify them in 11, that becomes unity, which is the merging of two ignorant, separate forces. So there are a lot of things that you can play around with that character, whether it's the name, the way that she's portrayed, the abilities she has, how she's brought back to life. She's a Christ figure, in a sense, and she encompasses both the male and the female. She's androgynous, hermaphroditic, in a sense, which is hermetic, part of where that word is extracted from. There's so many elements in TV shows and in movies, and again in books as well, that whether the author, I think, maybe you can tell me what you think of this, Joseph. I think that sometimes people are consciously, like authors and writers, they're consciously aware of it, and they're trying to put it in a film because they understand, maybe one, it has a really deep symbolic power that plays on the imagination, and people are going to want to watch and partake in that entertainment because of that. So that's almost like a form of magic, or it is a form of magic. Or they're doing it because they want people to be aware of it, because they want it to act on the imagination to help people grow as individuals. And sometimes, which I think this is where magic gets a very bad representation, you have those that exploit these types of things and put those in movies and TV shows, etc., the mass entertainment, so that they can exploit the fact that these symbols are very powerful. We see corporations do this. We see Starbucks with the Melusine logo do this. And so they use these symbols to exploit the subconscious of the average person. And by doing that, you're able to control. It's literally a form of mind control, which is, of course, part of Stranger Things, based on the MKUltra projects. It's all magic, though, whether it's a document where the CIA used LSD, or it's mind control in the sense of suggestibility through marketing and advertising. It's all a form of magic.
Yeah, and I've got to say that again, that goes back to me being concerned about all this stuff, and that's why I wanted to do the show. Now, I'm going to be hosting this show in December, and I'm going to really delve into ufology a little bit more and get into that, because I'm trying to bridge the links between the two. But I will say that, I used to think it was a coincidence when I watched movies like Star Wars and, Harry Potter and J.R.R. Tolkien movies. But the symbolism is just so apparent now that you're right. I mean, do these people know the stuff, or is there a subconscious force channeling through them when they make these things? When you know how they say art, Ryan, is a liberal art, right? It's one of the liberal arts that awakens the soul. So when someone writes a song, sonnet, makes a movie, paints a picture, a lot of people think, well, look at the symbolism, they're occultists. Maybe not. Maybe this stuff is just coming through to them like a higher truth, that hermetic as above, so below type thing.
Precisely, absolutely. And you know what I was thinking about the show today. I think I gave an example on the broadcast earlier, but I was thinking after the show about how it seems like there's this stream of consciousness, and it's like a dam. And I just remember the scene from Vegas Vacation where Chevy Chase is the water's coming through the hole. He's trying to plug it with gum, and then he's got his fingers in. He's trying to stop the water coming through. It seems like there's something that comes through consciously. And you start to look at these different projects that the show Stranger Things and the show Fringe even was based off of a lot of this fringe science. You look at something like Babylon Working. Babylon Working was an experiment and was a ritual that was carried out by Jack Parsons, the rocket scientist, for which Jack Parsons Laboratory, JPL, Jet Propulsion's Laboratory, later was built on that site. Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, and Aleister Crowley had attempted to use, I would consider it, perverted forms of sex magic, the power of the orgasm and sex, perverting it, turning it dark, and using that energy to open a portal to bring something into this world. That's, of course, very similar to the OTO ritual. I believe it was an OTO ritual that Aleister Crowley performed at the Bolinskine House in Scotland. And then there's the myth that the Loch Ness Monster came through that portal. I think that was a clever way to distract from what Crowley was doing there. But we're talking about somebody, even though he may have been, and I interviewed the guy here in Idaho University, who wrote a book on Crowley and the MI6. So he might have had those connections and probably did the government. But then you have not just the sex magic, and you don't have just seemingly private citizens, people that are just scientists, people that are occultists that try to do these things. You also have the U.S. military and other militaries around the world. Project Rainbow, which started a lot of this. Many people know it as the Philadelphia experiment. 1936. And in 1936, these programs started to grow. The research started to grow into using technology to be able to teleport, to be able to turn invisible. Things that are magical in nature, things that if you didn't understand the technology, it would be indistinguishable from magic. And I started to notice that not only do you have the Babylon working ritual, you have Project Rainbow with the Philadelphia experiment, you got Project Montauk, and they didn't use technology necessarily, big Tesla coils, they didn't use sex magic necessarily, they used kids. Like in Stranger Things, the kids that were taken from their parents and they were put into this program, they were raised in seclusion, and they had their powers amplified, their psychic abilities amplified through something called the Phoenix Project, which was a part of Montauk, which is what Stranger Things was actually going to be named, Montauk. The Duffer Brothers wanted to shoot it in Long Island. They were told no. They were told it was too cold to shoot it there, which is kind of like the equivalent of NASA saying they can't show us colored photos of the moon because they ran out of ink. It was just an excuse. But my point is, whether it's technology, sex magic, or using children who have these psychic abilities, it seems like that there's some type of consciousness, there's some type of force that is, it's not that we're tapping into it to get these ideas, but it's tapping into us to give us these ideas so that we play around with things that not only do we not understand, but even if we have an understanding, like opening a portal to another dimension, we're doing it so these entities are, in a sense, as vampires, as parasites, which is a common theme here, as we'll probably get into. They can't infiltrate, like the vampire can't cross the threshold into your sacred space. You have to allow them in. I think that's what this force is. Whatever this force is, whatever that monster in the upside down world is, it's coming into our world. It's influencing us so that we build the prison for ourselves, so that we build the opening, the portal. We open the portal for these creatures to come through and welcome them into our world. I don't know if that's a wild thought, but that's just where my mind goes when I look at all of this information.
Do you think that it's possible that the cryptids like Dogman, Loch Ness, I wouldn't say Sasquatch, but other cryptids, do you think that, that it's possible that in higher forms of magic where they're trying to open these portals, that they are, I know it sounds preposterous, but that they are letting in these creatures into this realm, possibly, maybe? Or is it just a psychic type thing?
Who is exactly? You mean like an intentional thing?
Yeah, well, let's say, for instance, someone learns the art of, I guess, like you're saying, the sex magic or whatever, and they go to try to open up a portal, and they don't really understand it, and they're just doing it for their own power, which is a lot of what, this show is going to be about, and Leo's going to talk about. But when that portal opens, do you think these things only just come through in the spirit realm, or is it possible that they manifest physically?
I would think that it's probably a combination of both and more that we don't think about. You think that in nature we find really great examples of things that otherwise we might consider too fantastic to believe. You look at the concept of after death, where people say that the light is a false light. It's kind of like the bug zapper, and it's actually going to lead us back into the physical world. We're not going to be absorbed back into the one and the all, if you will. And so you look at the false light and you think, was there some type of entity, alien, AI? There's something that's tricking us into going towards the light. We find that in nature, though. You go to the really deep parts of the ocean, you find an anglerfish, the rod on the top of its head, little light. And that was also in Finding Nemo, another Pixar Disney movie, where they're down in the water. It's very dark, and Dory is asking, "Are you my conscious? Are we dead?" And then they see the light, and they go towards the light. But the light is a false light.
I remember that. That was cute.
Right, and the monster, and that's in a kid's movie. And then you tie that in with Monsters Incorporated, the portals to other dimensions. There's just so many different elements that are being incorporated into those movies and TV shows, and it influences us on a deep level. But as per your question, I really don't know. I think any and all things are possible, and in terms of manifestation or bringing something through, I think whatever it is, whatever we can define it as, that dark force, I think it is influencing us to open that portal, to allow it to come through, kind of like the vampire that needs our permission to cross into our sacred space. We have to allow that parasite into our lives in order for it to control us.
Wow, that's a big concept. I think the Mike in the spaced out hashtag spaced out radio on Twitters is putting up flyers like tonight on Saturday night's Double Screecher, the Terranauts, fire maidens from outer space, and the virgin sacrifice to the gods of Ghastly Galaxy. So, I mean, yeah, I get that this stuff sounds out there, and I think this is a guy that's known for the snark in the chat rooms, but that's great snark, by the way. But there is, I will say this. Crowley thought that it was real, and Crowley done things like, the Moonchild, and I know I say Crowley and you say Crowley, but potato, right? So, he tried to manifest so many things that I think it literally in the end caused his addiction and killed him. Could have, but
to go mad.
There's a lot of people that love Aleister Crowley. He's even on the covers of the Beatles album, and half of me says the liberation of the person's will is a great thing. But there's another part of it that seems to be just desecrating the teachings of the mysteries to where it doesn't matter what you do it for. I guess is it all in the hands of the person that's using it, Ryan? Is that what it is?
I think it's intention. If you have intention to help as opposed to harm, and of course there's a gray area, some might refer to as gray magic, where there's a discrepancy as per whether something is selfish or selfless. But the more selfish your actions become, the more harmful or detrimental to others, the more it starts to lean toward black magic. And then the more selfless your actions are towards others, the more it starts to lean towards white magic. And it's not that white and gray are in opposition to black necessarily, but by definition, the people that do things for selfish reasons would more so, I think, be considered black magicians as opposed to those that do things selflessly for others, and those would be more of the white magicians. Again, there's a gray area in the middle.
So Elizabeth is asking a question in the Spreaker chat room. What about the idea of opening a portal between parallel realities? Could it be about that?
Well, that's precisely, you see that even in a show like Family Guy. The opening of a portal between two different realities is the theme. As a matter of fact, in the show Fringe, if you've ever seen Fringe, I remember watching that show, and it was canceled because the studios and the critics said it was too intelligent. Nobody wanted to come home after a long day at work and watch a show they had to think about. But there's a scene where one of the scientists, he had gotten into this other world, and it's long after 2001, and the camera backs out in the last shot of the season, and he's in the World Trade Center. So he's in another reality. And the theme keeps coming up that as they've opened this other world, only one world can survive. So you've got worlds in collision with each other. One world will consume the other world. So if you want to consider that an alternate reality, an alternate dimension, then perhaps it might suffice. If not, maybe you have a different idea of what another dimension or another reality looks like. Maybe it's not an upside-down inverted world like Stranger Things, but you also see that theme in Stranger Things too, where in the second season, the roots of this monstrous force from this other world is growing underneath of our world in Indiana, and it's draining and sucking the life out of everything because it's a parasite, which again I said was very important, and again we can also get into that at some point.
Did you ever read that channeled material? I think I asked you this before on my show, Lighting the Void. Did you ever read that channeled material, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth? Did you ever get on that yet?
Yeah, I have a copy of that somewhere.
There is a section in there where Thoth is talking about the dweller below, and the halls of Amenti, right? For some reason, in the ancient land of Kemet, which means blackness or like black soil or something.
Yes.
All of this is super symbology for alchemy, but for some reason I think that he's talking about the same thing, the Qliphoth of the underworld in the Kabbalah. I could be wrong, but I think the Kabbalah goes back much further than Jewish teachings. I really do.
Yeah. No doubt. I think that the so-called Jewish teachings kind of adopted the Kabbalah, that mysticism goes back long, long, long before the more modern forms of Judaism as we know it. I agree with you. That the interesting thing about black and white is that you constantly have this idea of the battle, the black and white Masonic floor, the constant idea of the battle between darkness and light. And you can use that in the images of the sun rising and bringing light to the dark, and then the moon coming up and being the great reflector. It's nighttime, and then the sun saves us again. You see that's a common theme throughout hundreds and thousands of cultures over time, or different belief systems, more specifically mythology and symbolism. But you also find that darkness and light is something that you go through on a daily basis. You might get up in the morning, you're in a good mood, and then you stub your toe, and now you're in an upset mood. You go outside, your car tire is flat. You go through constant ups and downs in life. That's a very normal thing, and that's part of the battle between good and evil. But when you look at what real evil is, I think real evil is the theft of something else, and that's represented, the theft among many other things, but that's represented in the image of Jesus being crucified between what? Between the two thieves that have stolen. And Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and the light. And he sits between those two thieves like the two pillars of Solomon's temple and like the two horns of the Sabbatic goat, where in between the two horns you have the flaming torch, just like Jesus is the light of the world, like Lucifer, like Venus, and of course like Prometheus, who brings that torch that he lit from the sun god Apollo to mankind and then was casted onto the rock to have his liver consumed by a bird every day in punishment for defying the gods. And I digress because I want you to respond, of course, and I want you to take this show in any direction. But if you look at the story of Prometheus and how he was kind of almost crucified to a rock, and he had this bird eat his liver out every day, that's no different than Jesus crucified on the cross between the two thieves and having the spear of the Roman soldier puncture his side, or Odin hanged on the world tree having a spear puncture his side. So you start to see these Joseph Campbell type connections to everything.
Now, I'm a little bit confused about Joseph Campbell as well as I am trying to figure out Leo Zagami's message. Do you think Joseph Campbell didn't like the mysteries, as like he looked at everything like it was all? I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is a really tough question to ask. That every time someone enlightens us on what these mysteries or symbols mean, there's two types of perception that goes. One person is like, "Wow, that's great. I understand that now," and another one is like, "Yeah, that's how they're mind manipulating us and making us prisoners." And I don't know if could both of those be true. It's like, which side of the fence do you jump on that? You understand what I'm getting at?
I think I do. I believe I do, because when you think about the secret teachings of the ancient mysteries and the subject of secret societies comes into the conversation, that tends to provoke a response from some people that you're talking about the Illuminati, you're talking about Freemasons, and they're reacting, of course, on emotion, maybe something they watched on YouTube. And so they get really excited and start telling you that you're worshiping the devil, that all Masons are evil, that everybody who rubs their right eye and leaves their left eye open, they're in the Illuminati. But those are very, very misunderstood, not just symbols, but concepts. The Illuminati is a concept, I believe, and of course it was an actual secret society. But that's not really the point, because those things don't necessarily have anything to do with the alchemical nature of the secret teachings, the alchemy of self, transforming the lower animal nature into something of a more substantial substance, like turning lead into gold. Spiritual alchemy, of course, then you have physical alchemy. There are so many different components and elements to this, and I think one of the main reasons, there's a lot of them, but one of the main reasons that the secret teachings and we'll use that as kind of a symbol and a blanket statement for all of these forms of mysticism. The reason that the secret teachings were held in such confidence with the people that were initiated into the secret societies in Egypt and in Greece was because they were very powerful. The symbols were very powerful, and you don't just give that to somebody and let them play with it, because that's why you end up having, I think, whether it's a government project or it's somebody like Aleister Crowley trying to use those types of things to do other things like open a portal for which they don't really understand the repercussions of, or furthermore, they don't care what the repercussions are. Some people just want to see the world burn. So you keep those things in confidence because they are very, very powerful, and you don't want people to get access to them, because if they were to get access to them, they would pervert them, and the black magicians in particular would take them for their selfish desires and wants, and they would destroy the beauty of the alchemical transformation that comes about by following a more middle ground path that you would find in some of these secret teachings, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Really,
yeah, it does. It does make a lot of sense. Do you know are you familiar with who Jason Louv is? Louv?
I'm not, no.
Well, he's a chaos magician, and he was talking about that one time that, people would come to him and say, hey, I'm going to go open up a portal. So they studied these books and all of this stuff, and they'd go to Jason and say, oh, cool, I'm going to go open up a portal. And he's like, wait a minute, a portal to what? I mean, do you know what you're doing? What are your intentions? Yeah. What is this for? Do you know what you could release? It's like the whole point of this subject is that these teachings were made sacred for a reason, and I think a lot of people want to say that these teachings are the same one that John F. Kennedy was telling us about when he said he was opposed to secret societies and stuff like that. But if you listen to that speech, I believe he was talking about a real new world order that was trying to do something. I mean, he says it clearly that they work by covert means, and they're doing things to set up a system of control. And then he was shot. Yeah, I mean, that's got to be some kind of evidence for it.
I have that in my introduction for the show, that famous speech he gave to the newspaper writers, the journalists. See, the interesting thing about what you're suggesting is basically it's almost like an illusion that can be cast, and it's all a matter of perception, because if you're looking for proof that Masons are evil, you're probably going to find proof that backs up your preconceived conclusion. I've always given the example of like a paranormal investigator, and if you go into a house that's supposedly haunted and you think, well, it's haunted definitely because they told us it was, we're going to find ghosts here. We're going to find something. And so you start looking for ghost A because you were told that ghost A, that's what the homeowners have seen, and you completely overlook ghost B and never find any proof, or rather you find proof that really doesn't prove anything for ghost A. So if you don't go into the investigation, or it doesn't have to be paranormal investigating, it could be any type of investigation. If you go in thinking, yeah, this guy definitely murdered that woman, or this woman definitely murdered her kids, but you don't look at the evidence first, you just got this preconceived bias, rigid, narrow conclusion, and that doesn't get you anywhere. It takes you down the wrong path.
Right. And if you're just jumping in here, I want to let everybody know that when I got Leo on the show, I forgot that Leo lives in Rome, so he can only come in on the second part of the show. So I've got Ryan Gable here with us, who is the host of The Secret Teachings, which is a show that airs on the Fringe.fm on the L&M radio network, and it comes on at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Just letting everybody know that, because there's people asking who's talking right now, and I want to apologize to you, Ryan, because I threw all this last minute together, and I appreciate you coming on here with us like this.
No problem at all. I appreciate you having me. I sometimes feel as if I'm scrambled in my thoughts because there are so many things I have written down. I have just a stream of thoughts going through my head. I mean, I literally sat last night and I felt like I channeled the information when I did the analysis of Stranger Things and some of these other movies. And I even, found the stuff in the Necronomicon about the parasite horde entering into our world by a portal. I mean, all of this is very relevant. And I said it on the show earlier, maybe it's symbolic, but maybe it's a little more than just a symbol. Maybe it's a watered down version of truth, or that's not a right word to use. It's a watered down version of something that is very, very possible, that has happened. Again, just because you say portal, everybody kind of has a different idea of what a portal is. A portal doesn't have to be the thing you see in Stranger Things. A portal doesn't have to be something you'd see in some bizarre ritual, something that you might manifest and think that you see it because you're in a state of delusion and hysteria. A portal could really be anything. A portal could be, and I think this is a really great tie-in with the Philadelphia Project and some of these other programs that Stranger Things was based on. If you go back to the Philadelphia Project, do you remember, Joseph, some of the stories that were told about the ship and what it was surrounded in when it manifested after it was disappeared?
I do not. To be honest with you, I really don't.
So there was a story, there was actually a couple of documentaries made about it, that the ship was surrounded in this green mist. And that was really significant for me when I thought about that. And I realized, you know what? I interviewed Linda Godfrey. She wrote a book called Monsters Among Us. I interviewed her a couple times. And when she came on the show, we talked about it has nothing to do with naval projects, researching teleportation. It has nothing to do with sex magic and Babylon working. It has nothing to do with Project Montauk or MK Ultra or the Phoenix Project. What it was basically a police officer or some people walking through the woods, and they come across this green mist, this green haze that's just kind of there. And then they walk into it or near it, and time becomes warped, or they lose some amount of time. And she has stories in there that are just average everyday people. Hey, I'm walking in the woods, and there's some green mist. That's weird. Let's look at that. And then all of a sudden you lose 3 hours. So those are completely separate from something like the Philadelphia experiment. And yet during the Philadelphia experiment, when they used this mechanical forms of technology, like the Tesla coils are very famous for using those, what happened to the ship? Well, witnesses claim that there was a green mist that engulfed the ship as it began to, reappear. And
when did this happen?
The Philadelphia experiment took place in the 1940s, 1943. In fact, 43 was one. I mean, it was an experiment that lasted a couple of days, perhaps longer than a week. I mean, there were multiple experiments carried out. The research started in 36.
Is there anybody that's still alive that we could talk to about that? I wonder.
I think Art Bell interviewed the last guy. I think the guy died. I'm pretty sure. But the cool thing that I noticed, and maybe it's not cool to some people, maybe it's terrifying, that in 43 was when this program started, the Philadelphia Project, and in 1983, exactly 40 years, and not just exactly 40 years to the date, August 12th, that's when the Montauk Project was shut down. And so there was some speculation between Philadelphia experiment and Montauk. One began and one ended on literally the same day, 40 years apart, that this opened some type of wormhole or some type of portal between these two time periods, and that some of the soldiers on the ship were transported to 1983. Some people in the 80s maybe were transported back to the 40s. I think sometimes that's perhaps sensational, but just because some element of that might be a sensationalized version of what really happened, it's a watered-down version of what happened, it doesn't mean that there's not still some substance of reality floating around in that water that's been added to make it more palpable. And one thing I noticed in Stranger Things, if you've seen this show, and this is something that I think is really powerful and kind of speaks to the fact that it's not just a show that bases the content around some secret black operation that took place in the 40s or in the 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s until it was officially shut down. There's a scene where the kid, one of the main characters, Will, he's possessed by this parasite. And his mom it's like an exorcism, actually. They've got him tied down. They got black veins coming through his neck. You can hear this very deep, almost demonic-like voice talking. And she's trying to basically bring her son back out. And as she's doing that, and I didn't know, I had to rewind this. I thought maybe I misheard what she said. So Winona Ryder's character, she's there, she's talking to her kid, and she says, do you remember when you were a little bit younger and you had these crayons, and the crayons that you had, you loved your crayons more than anything else, and you used to draw these pictures, and you drew spaceships. And there's two meanings here I pulled out. She said you drew spaceships, but they weren't from a movie. They were real, and you called them your rainbow ships. So there's two things that you can pull out of that. One, they're referring to Project Rainbow, which was where a lot of this research started, and Project Rainbow was a ship. And she's also saying, and I'm not saying Winona Ryder or any of the other people involved know what they're even saying, or maybe it was in the script for a last-minute revision. It could have been anything. That's how movies and films and TV shows and things like that work. But the other thing she's saying is that what you drew, that rainbow ship, that's not from a movie. It's not just from a TV show. It's real. This project really happened. So you're being fed like this whole underlying code in a script for a TV show that's become immensely popular, and people are being filled with this information. And in one way, sure, like the Secret Teachings, it projects this image that, yeah, it's just a movie. But then you hear something like that, and they're acknowledging in the show subtly that, hey, it's not just from a movie. The rainbow ship is real. They did this experiment. Maybe it wasn't what you heard on, some documentary on TV, but nevertheless, it did take place. So something about this is relevant. Something about this is true.
Wow, that is really. I wish there was someone we could talk to about that. Still
about
yeah, because that is a fascinating story, and I guess it's documented, so that's cool as well. So you got a plethora of knowledge there, Ryan Gable. I will give you that. You've done your research, and that's a great thing. We got a few minutes before the break here. Could you tell us a little bit about you and why you got into and maybe how you got into the Secret Teachings?
Basically being interested in things like this and finding connections without looking for connections, and realizing that there were certain similarities, because I actually went to film school, and so I studied film, I studied TV. I always had an interest in the idea of aliens since I was a kid. But I would study films and movies, and I would start to find these very common themes between movies and TV shows, and common themes, of course, in mythology. I never read Joseph Campbell or anybody. I was just finding this myself, and then I got interested in people like that and started researching what other people had researched. And I guess it's just the way I can't really give you a romantic explanation, but the way my brain works is just, that's what I'm concerned with. I don't really care about anything else in terms of like entertaining myself. I entertain myself by finding these connections. And personally, my personal experience, I'll give you a really more mundane example that's not so magical, but in a way, I guess it is magical. Food is very powerful. And I remember as I grew up, I ate the worst kind of food, just complete trash, junk food. And I was really overweight, really sick, had a heart condition. And all I did was change my diet and really change my lifestyle. It's not really a diet. I changed my lifestyle, lost a ton of weight, got in shape, didn't have to buy some expensive health food book or go buy a bunch of expensive health food. Actually, it got cheaper to eat the way that I eat. And when I did that, not only did I feel better and I had more energy, but I could think more clear. So the more I did that, the more it allowed my brain to kind of process this type of thing. And simply because I took action and I changed my lifestyle without relying on somebody else, I realized the power that personal action and responsibility has. And so now I just apply that to everything I do, because I don't want to be sitting watching a TV show where it's not something like Stranger Things and I'm being filled with all of this Hollywood trash that is forcing me to subconsciously succumb to certain things that otherwise I would reject based on reason and logic.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I think that your show is awesome. I don't know if I have time to ask you the big question, which I'm going to wait till after the break to ask you a very important question that I've even wondered about it myself with you. But just to let everybody know, because we got some more people that's jumped in the chat room. The first part of the show, we're speaking with Ryan Gable. And Ryan is the host of the Secret Teachings radio show at thesecretteachings.info. Comes on every Wednesday Saturday and Sunday. And I can't stress this enough because there is a plethora of information in there that I think a lot of you guys that want to learn anything about the secret teachings or the mysteries can go there and learn. And Ryan is a great host because I'll tell you why. When he's wrong about something, he'll eat crow about it. He'll tell you, I used to think this way, but I was wrong about this, and now I'm looking at it this way. And I think that's that's just a great quality in a radio host.
So thank you very much. I don't eat crow anymore. I'm a vegetarian, but I'll eat something equivalent.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Although I did stop eating meat by going cold turkey. So,
yeah, I'm still working on that myself. I don't know if I'll ever be able to stop doing that, but it does bother me that one animal has to die a day to keep me happy. That bothers me a little bit because I love animals.
I do too. Maybe we don't need to eat it all, Joseph. There's a thought for break.
Maybe we don't need to eat it all. That's a good point.
Yeah,
we're gonna go into the first intermission of the show. If you're just joining us, I'm Joe Roop, and this is Spaced Out Saturday. I'm filling in for Dave Cruz. You guys don't go anywhere. The show's going to get more interesting as we go along. Leo Zagami is going to be joining us the second part of the show. Stick around. We'll be right back, guys.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night. The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Cruz and SOR.
Open up.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave, come on, man. Open up.
Dave's not here.
No, man, I'm Dave, man. Hey, come on, man.
Who is it?
It's Dave, man. Will you open
Who?
me? Dave, man, open up.
Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
Dave's not here.
Dave's not here. That's a fact. I figured y'all would think that was kind of funny. All right, welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I'm your host, Joe Roop, filling in for Dave Cruz. We have with us Ryan Gable from the Secret Teachings radio show, and we'll be bringing on Leo Zagami here in just about 30 minutes. If you're just tuning in on any of our affiliates or stations, thanks for joining us. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Elizabeth Anglin will be on, same time, speaking to Gary A. David about the Hopi migrations. And Monday night, Dave Scott will be discussing shadow people with Susan Fowler. Don't forget, Spaced Out Radio is here for you 7 nights a week. Ryan Gable is still here with us. Now, Ryan, again, thanks for being here. I do want to ask you, because we got about 30 minutes left here. We were discussing Crowley and the mystery schools, and tonight's topic is the infiltration of the mystery schools, right? And I want to know, do you think when Crowley went into the Golden Dawn and learned some of the what they call the second order materials that he learned, which were supposed to be secret, and revealed them to the public, published all of them. Do you think that has any, do you think, number one, was that a good thing or a bad thing? Some think it's good, some think it's bad. And number two, do you think that that has an effect on any of the bad stuff that's going on today as far as in the occult and magic world?
The first question, I would take more of a center path and say that depending on what perspective you come from, and personally, my perspective is the center path. So I would suggest that it can be both good and bad. The second part of your question, and I know that maybe that's a vague way to answer it, but that's really how I feel it could be good and bad. But the second part of the question, I would lean more towards the fact that regardless of what Crowley revealed or what some people might have thought he revealed, etc., that whatever is happening today in that sense is maybe fed by some things that Crowley did, but overall it would be happening regardless of what Crowley had done. Because even though it seems like some of these magicians, these black magicians, these sorcerers, they do stuff in the public. We've talked about mass shootings and the numerology. I've interviewed Marty Leeds about this and a handful of others. And they do things that are done just so blatantly in the public. And people like yourself, me, and some of your audience can pick it out, whether it's numbers or symbols. They do it intentionally. And I think what the key is really when you look at a character like Isis in Egypt, again, there's that question, is she good? Is she bad? She has black veils. She has white veils. Is she a good character, a bad character? The answer is both. Osiris, the god of resurrection, the green god, green man, he's good and bad. And the mysteries in Egypt, one of the highest teachings or highest facts was that Osiris was not just a green god, Osiris was a black god. But as you alluded to in Kemet, the black soil was a very good thing because black soil allowed for crops to grow, and that brought life. So when you get into those discussions about what is good and what is bad and whether or not that maybe had influence in relation to Crowley as per what's happening today, I'm sure in some way that it did, in the same way that these government projects like Project Rainbow, Philadelphia Experiment, Montauk, MK Ultra, Phoenix, Stargate, Grill Flame, the remote viewing programs, these programs have influence for entertainment, TV shows, books, movies. Some of those entertainment forums are perhaps portraying a little bit more than what others are. In the case of Stranger Things, combining all this together. But we could look at it and say, well, if it wasn't to be revealed by insiders, would we have had movies and TV shows that were made based on these concepts? Or are they only made because we've had declassification of this type of information? I mean, really, the bottom line is, if anybody gives you a definitive answer on my personal view, a definitive answer on why something is good or why something is bad, but they do it based on essentially opinion and they don't really give you an idea of why, they're just playing with you. They don't know. They have no clue. And my point for both of your questions is that I don't really know, but my perspective is, and I don't know if there is a way to really know, but my perspective is that it's not necessarily good or evil, and you would be seeing these types of things carried out in one way or another, regardless if Crowley had never even existed. He might have he did create a whole new school of thought and a whole form of sex magic and a whole bunch of other stuff. But there are others that have done equally the same thing. It's like arguing over whether or not Hitler was the most evil man in history. Okay,
sure.
You can have that perspective, but how about Mao killed 69 million and Stalin killed 30 million? What are we playing, golf? The lowest number wins? My point's just it's a matter of perspective.
Right. Well, Crowley, if anybody has ever read the Book of the Law, it's almost like it's such a welcoming and enlightening thing. And then, you start flipping through the pages and all of a sudden you read this thing that says, and, I peck out the eyes of Jesus and Muhammad and yada, yada, yada. It's the new Aeon, almost as if he's bringing some megalomaniac force. And it says, the weak will be the weak and all this stuff. And it's really scary, man, as you go through it. And it's kind of crazy,
Well, think about this. I'm really glad that you gave that example. Peck out the eyes of Jesus. Think about the Sabbatic goat. Think about Elvis Levi. I had always heard of Elvis Levi, and I thought Elvis Levi was a Satan worshiper because I thought that that's what the goat represented. And regardless of Eliphas Levi's interpretation and the famous drawing of Baphomet, people use Baphomet in a lot of different ways. And when you use the character of Baphomet, there's a difference between, let's say, the white magicians that use it because they understand what it means, and the black magicians who don't really understand what it means. And I think what I mean by that, to give a little more detail, is that if you ask me what that symbol means, if I have that hanging up in my radio studio, I can give you a college dissertation about what that symbol means, not because I'm smart, but just because I've studied it for so long. The other person who uses it just because they think it looks cool, because they think, ooh, I like darkness, I like goats, I like the devil, I want to be rebellious, I want to wear these symbols because I think that they're evil and they harm people and I hate the world, that's feeding into the black magic and the selfishness, and that plays on the imagination, and just in the same way that, it plays to my imagination to understand and appreciate and respect that type of an image. And what that symbol essentially represents in the mysteries, or any other symbol for that matter, I look at it as a scarecrow. It basically exists, not necessarily Baphomet, but symbols like this exist to scare and to ward off the profane who would come into the mysteries or try to get access to the temples without the necessary initiatic teachings that would allow them to understand the higher. You can't just, how do you explain to somebody? I mean, we go through this every single day. You, myself, 100 other radio hosts, and thousands and millions of listeners that go through this in their daily lives, trying to explain that, look, a character like Osiris, he's about resurrection, the green god, but he's also about death and destruction. Saturn is a god of destruction, but also a god of life. You can't just say that to somebody who is so apt to believe one of two extremes. It warps their brain. They don't understand it. They have to be brought through that process, just like I was. Nobody brought me through it. I just kind of went through it myself, and at one point I realized, wait a minute, you have to have, life implies death, like Alan Watts says. Life implies death, death implies life. Blackness implies white, white implies blackness in a sense. So obviously there have to be these two unifying elements, or unified elements, these two hypothetical branches of the same source, the same tree. It's not necessarily good and evil per se, but it is good and evil. And the good is as evil as the evil is good. Remove a letter from evil, or rather add a letter to evil, you get the word devil, and take a letter away from good, you get the word God. Take the word evil and you reverse it, like the upside down world in Stranger Things, you invert it, and what do you get? You get the word live, a world where evil actually lives and life and goodness dies. It's a completely different world. It's a completely different perspective when you can start to see things that way, realizing that there really is no evil. But when we think that there's evil, it can manifest like a tulpa, like a thought form. So I guess my point back to your question was that sometimes these symbols, and maybe talking like that, plucking out the eyes of Jesus, that's a way to divert people away from studying things that would be perhaps profaned further and exploited for personal selfish desires, which is the last thing you'd want out of some of the secret teachings. Does that make sense, Joseph?
Yeah, it does. And one of the reasons why I've got you on here before I talk to Leo is to help the audience understand the symbolism of the Western initiatic system, of birth, death, and resurrection, the Jesus story. There's the Osiris story, the Horus story, the Krishna story. It's the same story. But it's what I'm afraid of. I guess for the first time in my life, the change that I see myself in the Western systems, I guess I might be a little afraid of it. I may be getting old. I don't know, Ryan. I know that when I grew up, you went to church, right? And there were men that would join the Freemasons. Most of them were Christian, and they held the Christian teachings of Masonry, that Jesus story, pretty much the New Testament. They held it sacred. It meant something. So it almost seems like there's a fine line between the distinction of the right path in the initiatic system and the wrong path. And it almost seems like it's the line between helping humanity or helping the self, or spreading energy and spreading the cycle, or vamping the energy and killing the cycle. It's the only way I can explain it, and it's very hard to discuss, actually, sometimes.
Well, there's your Masonic allegory. Look at Samson in the Bible. Samson pushes the two pillars apart and the temple collapses on top of him. Those two pillars are philosophy and science, and logic and reason. Have your pick of whatever wording you'd like to apply, but the concept stays the same. If you push those pillars apart, the temple collapses and it buries reason in the rubble. And so if you have a look at that type of symbolism, you look at the fact that a lot of, in fact, most of, but not all of, most of the secret teachings, whether in Greece, outside of Athens, or in Memphis, before these keys to the secret teachings were lost, and most of them have been today, especially by the Masonic order that keeps things alive symbolically, although they don't really understand the keys to their initiation. Although Manly Hall, I think, understood a lot more than most Masons did. That's why they made him an initiate of the highest order when he wasn't even a member of the order. But my point is, the temple analogy is beautiful, I think, because if you have this temple idea, the structure of the pyramid, the structure of the temple, every single, in a microcosmic sense, it's not an action, but things that in your life, like your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, all of these things, when you can refine them, when you allow your consciousness, your will, when you overcome emotion through will, when you overcome, which is actually what's the name of the main character in Stranger Things, Will, you overcome, your really dark thoughts, negative thoughts. You can overcome those. What does 11 do in Stranger Things? She has a chance to kill the guys that did this to her, and she does do that in the first season. But once she progresses and she's reborn, she realizes she's not going to commit murder and do to them what they did to her, because this guy has daughters. So she walks away.
Something real quick that's fascinating about that when she meets her sister, who's number 8. 8 is the sphere of Hod, I believe, which is the Mercury sphere, the sphere of intelligence and magic. And what does that woman do? She makes people see stuff that's not there.
She makes people see stuff that's not there. It's just like Morpheus in the Matrix. Morpheus is the Greek god of dreams who takes you through the dream world. I'm sure they stumbled across. Well, so they stole that from Sophia Stewart I interviewed, but that's a different story, the Matrix. But regardless of what we're looking into, whether it's thoughts, actions, or emotions, being able to control your actions, it's just the overcoming of the animal nature, the overcoming of bestial nature, and the resurrection of self. And I think that's why that symbol is so powerful. Whether it's in a movie, it's everywhere around us. It surrounds us. These beautiful stories, and it is the epitome of nearly every aspect of our lives, whether it's alchemy, resurrection, the daily and the monthly and the weekly and the yearly cycles. It's all around us. It's just a matter of how aware of it we are and how much we actively choose to participate in a world that is completely filled with magic. It just might not be Harry Potter, Hermione, and Ron.
I was speaking the other day about a hip-hop video that I saw on Facebook where they were explaining the symbolism of the days of the week and all the symbols on the dollar bill, and you're living in a matrix where you're just a slave and a sheep and yada, yada, yada. Why are people so quick to spread fear once they learn that what this stuff really means, the days of the week, the lunar cycle? Why do they think that it's always a bad thing anytime? Why do you think that is? They think it's a bad thing anytime they learn something new.
That is a very, very, very interesting question that you ask. I would say fear of the unknown, but also intrigue in the unknown, and that's why you hear black magic. People tend to navigate themselves towards black magic more than anything else, because you can you're granted whatever you want, but they don't understand. They don't have the maturity to know that it comes with a price. Whether you're losing yourself in it to madness, or you end up, succumbing to drugs or whatever the case is, like Crowley, kind of fall into a state of delirium. But perhaps part of the reason that people do that is because they're afraid, and they're afraid of things they don't understand, which is again why those scarecrow symbols were used to prevent people from profaning the mysteries. And unfortunately today, since so many of the keys have been lost, and I don't hold them. Somebody told me one time, you host the secret teachings, you must have a lot of things that that are secrets that you're teaching. It's like, no, it's the name of a book. It's the name of the show. I don't really know any secrets. I'm just observing things that anybody can observe. I don't have any inside information. I just see what I see and I observe what I observe, and then I analyze it and talk about it. So my point is, though, you look at a dollar bill, and you're exactly right, Joseph. It's funny because I used to think the same thing. Oh, there's a pentagram there. You can kind of draw it. Ooh, you can spell out Mason. Oh, it's a pyramid. Well, what does that pyramid represent? As I was just alluding to a moment ago, the pyramid represents the unfinished temple, the unfinished pyramid. It represents society in the macrocosm. It represents the universe in the macrocosm. It represents the self in the microcosm. And all of those things that you refine, the actions, the thoughts, the emotions, those are like bricks in that temple. And if you are able to continue to refine those elements in self, conquering the three-headed dog, then you are able to find the philosopher's stone, as you see in Harry Potter. They go through the devil's snare after lulling the three-headed dog Fluffy or Cerberus to sleep. And so what happens is you conquer those elements, you conquer those demons like Solomon, you're resurrected, you have the power, you're in control, you have accomplished or completed that pyramid, that temple. The one for society is every initiate, if you will. Every initiate is a brick in that temple. And the goal is to essentially structure society in a way where the temple is complete, where we have a grand Platonopolis, where wisdom, where science, where philosophy resides, where there's no conflict, there's no war, where wisdom
it's like the Force in Star Wars, that it's everything, underlying all things.
Underlying all things. There you go. And remember, not just in Star Wars, remember in Stranger Things, again, 11 doesn't succumb to that evil because she has to channel the hatred of the people that did these things to her, these experiments, and it gives her more power. She didn't succumb to it. It's kind of like the Emperor in Star Wars.
Just so
unlimited
perfect,
power.
Man. These symbols, I'm sorry to cut you off, but the symbolism in these things are so perfect.
Well, if you think that's cool, this is great. I know somebody asked about the parasite, and I wanted to explain this because I noticed this across the board. This is a common theme that came up in Stranger Things, and even if you didn't see it, you might have seen the Super Bowl halftime commercial where they've got this big monster over top of the city, huge monster, and it's a spider-like parasite type creature, and they even refer to it as a virus and a parasite later on in the show. Now, you think about the demiurge. Some people like David Icke refer to the demiurge as a virus, as a bad copy, archontic. And you have that mixed with the demigorgon. I know people are going to say, well, it's from Dungeons & Dragons. It is, but where do you think these people that made Dungeons & Dragons got it from? They got it from classical mythology. The Gorgon, the earth dweller. There are 3 of them. One of them is immortal, and their look, like Medusa, turns men to stone. They are dragons. They are serpent-like. So this is what I found so fascinating. Check this out. I know we only got a couple minutes here. You ever watch the movie Monsters, Inc.? The guys, the characters, Billy Crystal and John Goodman play Solly and Mike Wazowski. And both of these characters have horns. There's the devil horns, right? One of the other characters, voiced by Steve Buscemi, the snake lizard creature, you think he's kind of evil the whole time. But all he really is, it's almost like gray magic, because all he's trying to do is just win this contest. But you think he's the bad guy the whole time. You think he's essentially the black magician, if we're going to use that theme. But that's not the real bad guy. The real bad guy is the guy that runs the power company, the guy that is exploiting these children, the guy that is terrifying these kids, the guy that wants to harness that fear. And what is this character? He's very similar to the monster in Stranger Things. He's a crab-like, spider-like, parasite-like creature. And you find that same type of image in the Necronomicon. They call it the parasite horde that enters our world through a portal. In Monsters, Inc., how do the monsters enter our world? Through a portal, and they suck the life, essentially, out of children. They suck the fear out. They feed off the fear. Remember Stranger Things? They opened the portal accidentally. It's not just some government conspiracy. They accidentally opened a portal. In the second season, the scientist in charge is saying we have to keep this concealed, not because we don't want people to know the truth, but because people could weaponize this, demonstrating that it's not the government, it's not some evil scientist. They're trying to confine this spreading problem. And so you have the Department of Energy in the X-Files. I interviewed an ex-FBI agent about this who was reprimanded for releasing files. He said he didn't do it, but he knows the people that did to Chris Carter. And a lot of the X-Files is based off of real FBI documents. In one of the episodes, where do they have the alien? In the Department of Energy. Again, Monsters, Inc., where are they opening these portals? In the Department of Energy. It's the energy storehouse in Monsters, Inc.
You don't think it's possible, though, that the government, the government is involved with the secret societies? I mean, I know David Griffin, who's a member of the Alpha Omega Rosicrucians, talks about how Aleister Crowley was a plant from the British government into the society to learn those secrets. And then you have him and Jack Parsons opening portals and talking to aliens and UFOs. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying maybe it's happening on both ends,
I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, I think that I alluded to that earlier, because you do have government projects. You have people like Crowley, and I mentioned MI6, and they're kind of working together, but they're also sort of working separately. Again, it's not something we can place a yes or no answer on, like black and white. Well, this is where it's all coming from.
Sure.
There's a lot of sources. So you find that there's these parasite-like creatures and everything, and they come into our world through these portals. My point is, though, there's a movie called The Fifth Element, and at the beginning of The Fifth Element, the president's there, and there's this high priest, and he calls it the most terrible intelligence. Mm-hmm. This intelligence that they try to bomb. And
Black Sun.
The Black Sun. It's evil, basically. The black goo is on their heads later. It's evil, and the more they attack it, the more powerful it becomes. The more they are aggressive, the more powerful it becomes. And what happens in Monsters, Inc., where they find out that laughter, joy, love is 10 times more powerful than a scream, and that love and joy and happiness dissipates the darkness. No matter how powerful those forces seem, laughing at them takes away all of their power. And I know that wasn't portrayed in Stranger Things, but when the character, before he was possessed, he tried to stand up to the monster, he did so it was brave of him as it was portrayed, but he did so without that element infused. It was an element of still fear and anxiety, and so the monster took him over. In order to stand and look these things in the face and defeat them, you can't do it with the same types of weapons it uses, because it will find a way to defeat you using your good intentions, using your will. And again, the name of the character in Stranger Things. There's a lot more to go into. If you want to hear more, you can listen to my show today from The Secret Teachings, secretteachings.info.
I named my son after that movie when the first time I heard the name Corbin, because The Fifth Element is one of my favorite movies. I knew that if I ever had a son, that's what I was going to name him. And that movie has alchemy all in it. All in that movie.
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Before I make this phone call to Rome and we let you go, tell everybody where and how they can find you, social media, website, everything.
Absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me on. No problem that it's short notice anytime. The website is www.thesecretteachings.info, and you can find my email there. It's rdgable, like Clark Gable, rdgable@yahoo.com. Contact me for any reason. My Skype is my email, secretguests@hotmail.com, so you can contact me on Skype. And you can also find me on Twitter @TSTeachings, and our main social media page, facebook.com/The Secret Teachings. My website, you can find our entire show archive, and there's also a YouTube link. Thank you so much, Joseph.
Thank you for coming on the show, Ryan. It's really cool to have you. I'm glad that you joined us, and I look forward to further discussions with you about this. This is great.
We'll have another show sometime. Joseph was also on The Secret Teachings a few times, and so is Leo. So have a good time with Leo, Joseph, and have a good night.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. All right, Ryan Gable, everybody. And now joining the program, we're kind of doing this a little bit different. We're going to have Leo Zagami. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you guys have ever, if you don't know who Leo Zagami is, then you need to just look it up, because he's got tons of books on us. He's got tons of books he wrote about the mystery schools and about the Illuminati. And Leo, are you with us?
Yes, sure. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks for joining us. I know it's early in Rome, and I really appreciate you spending this time with us. Thank you so much.
Well, yes, it's Sunday morning, early hours of the morning, so we had to make a little bit of an effort, but that's worth it, I guess.
Right. Now, hey, Leo, you've been on several radio shows and have authored several books on the subject of exposing what the New World Order really is, the Illuminati subject, if you will. But your new book, which I'm still reading, and it's very interesting to me, is great. I've studied the Western initiatic system for quite a long time, and I hold it close to my soul. Help us understand what you're saying about the mystery schools and how it's being infiltrated. I mean, some people think that you don't have proof of this and you're just making all these allegations, and even some people think that you just want to talk bad about Freemasonry and the initiatic system as a whole. But from what I'm reading in your book, that's not exactly true. It seems your message is that these teachings are being infiltrated, possibly manipulated by possibly a satanic idea. Is that correct?
Yes, first of all, let me send my regards to Ryan. I saw you had him on your show. I've been several times a guest of his own show, and it's a pleasure to be, as I said, with you and to discuss these topics, and of course to clear also a lot of misunderstandings, like you pointed out. It's obviously clear to me, and I think also to your listeners who know my work, that if they make such criticism, they have not read one of my books, because I have published several books, as you also pointed out, and in all of my books I explain very well these topics, and I also explain very well that I am still a Freemason. I'm a Grand Master myself of a Christian Masonic order known as the Strict Observance, which is a Masonic order reserved to the aristocracy and headed by, of course, always a member of a royal family, in this case me. And so I find it ridiculous to say I am anti-Masonic. I am definitely anti a certain form of Freemasonry, which of course in the last 2 centuries has been growing, becoming that liberal form of Freemasonry that has conditioned the lives of many and has been working towards a communistic New World Order. Why do I say that? Because there is plenty of evidence for it. As you have seen also from my latest book, I always point out on the sources for my work, and they have to be credible sources. If not, I will not, do such accusations. When it comes down to Freemasonry, I must say it's a great institution, but like many other institutions, like politics, religion, they have been gradually corrupted. So it's not only about Freemasonry here, it's about all the institutions of mankind that in this day and age are corrupted by greed, by materialistic interest, by sexual deviancy. So when it comes down to Freemasonry, I have, of course, talked a lot about it in my new book, like you said at the beginning, my new book, which is called The Decline of the Western Initiatic System and the Rise of Satanism in Our Society. Why there has been this rise of Satanism? Because certain secret society, or society with secrets like Freemasonry, because everybody knows Freemasonry, so it's not really a secret society, have gradually let into their fold the dark side, and this dark side has eventually taken over the show. And so by taking over the show in the invisible, let's say in the more reserved world of the Western Initiatic system and of all these various confraternities, secret society, knighthoods, and so on, they manage in the end to corrupt then outwards our own society. Because as you have seen in my book, I make this scheme right very evident at the beginning and the cover of the book, where you see there is a profane world, then you go gradually in, there is the Blue Lodges of Freemasonry, then you go, there is the Illuministic orders, then further on you go, and of course you should go towards people with illumination, with great knowledge. You should be knowing yourself, you should be perfectionating yourself. But that's not the case anymore, because Freemasonry has become an institution used and abused for other means. And these means, they are actually anti-Masonic most of the time. Most regular Masons say, well, we do a lot of charity. We, of course, study the allegories of esoteric teachings of the mystery schools of old, and so we don't do anything wrong. Well, it's true. The majority of regular Freemasons are not really involved with the New World Order. But there is then a deviant faction that is dominant. And by ignoring this dominant faction and at times criticizing it in the wrong way, because you see, the Freemasons have for a long time simply ignored the fact that this criticism had some truth in them. And so by doing that, the conspiracy has grown. And at the same time, within their own lodges, also the infiltration has grown. Let's say, for example, the Ordo Templi Orientis is a paramasonic order founded between Austria and Germany at the beginning of the last century. What happened later on is that Aleister Crowley, this black magician, took over the show. He tried to implement his law of Thelema around 1920 on the remaining people who didn't, in the Masonic world, didn't really want to accept this new religion he had in mind.
Right.
And in the end, he actually managed to take over this Ordo Templi Orientis, which he didn't found himself. It's wrongly to think that Aleister Crowley founded the OTO. Actually, Theodor Reuss, the last Grand Master before Aleister Crowley, probably it's actually quite clear that he didn't want Crowley to have anything to do anymore with the order, because he saw that his teachings were not really compatible with the Western initiatic system. And that's where we go back to my book, the subject of my book, which is the decline of this system, which happens because instead these teachings have been accepted and gradually they have corrupted our society. These teachings have filtered through Hollywood, for example, and they have become the teachings of many people in Hollywood who have then made films, have imposed their own views on millions of people around the world. And now, of course, we have the Hollywood scandals coming out, which is a confirmation of all this. But there is also the Vatican behind the decline of the Western initiatic system, because the Vatican never really wanted the Rosicrucians to be the true Illuminati that really had some knowledge that could help the world. The Jesuits infiltrated the Rosicrucians right from the beginning, just as they did with Freemasonry and with other institutions and religions. So the Jesuits are, in the end, probably some of the most powerful agents of this new world order. And of course, now they have placed their own pope on top of the pyramid. They have it easy, let's say. So I hope I gave you a spectrum of. When it comes then to the fact that I might be telling the truth or not. Well, I mean, I bring to the table documents in my books. Maybe people, instead of only viewing my videos or listening to my interviews and having a superficial view of my work, they should go and read my books, because in the books I have an academical perspective, and it's very difficult that they can actually, that this evidence I'm bringing forward is not found as genuine, because I really try to find more than one, more evidence to substance, to put substance to what I'm saying, and documents and photos, and there is people and interviews that I have made with grandmasters, with other people of the Western initiatic system that demonstrate that my involvement. And so in the end, of course, maybe in 2006, when I came out at the beginning on the internet with my first confessions, before starting in 2009 with my books in Japan, I could be considered a flake or somebody that had to prove himself. But after all these years, after being running for parliament in Italy, doing all sorts of things, I don't think I have much to demonstrate any longer.
No, I mean,
I mean, for the people who know me in that way, they know that it's genuine. Also, because you can't really accede to certain environments. You can participate and run conferences with Grand Masters of Freemasonry or participate in a certain environment if you are not part of it.
Sure.
You cannot arrive in Hollywood and meet so-and-so, or arrive in the Vatican and meet so-and-so, or arrive in another place and meet so, if you are not that person. They will just, cite you as a joke. So I think that also my work with InfoWars has been very important in the last few years regarding the investigative journalism side of things, because we have brought out many scoops that were very powerful, and that, of course, triggered also some reactions from the mainstream media.
I'm sure it did.
A lot of things which I have written a long time ago came to fruition. And this demonstrated once again that what I was talking about was genuine.
Yeah, and there are others that such as like David Griffin, who is very concerned with this as well. David Griffin, who I talk about a lot, really despises, and I don't know that he despises many things because he's such a great guy, despises the fact that Aleister Crowley broke his vows, infiltrated the Golden Dawn, released all this stuff, and he feels that Aleister Crowley was responsible for in fact, the majority of all the black magic that's in our society today. Would you agree with that, or do you think it's bigger than that?
Well, I mean, I pointed that out during my book. I mean, I don't know if you read the whole of my book, The Decline of the Western Initiatic System and the Rise of Satanism in our Society, but I pointed out that Crowley was definitely one of the main characters responsible for this decline, because he took on himself an oath, curse, and a position within the dark side of the Illuminati that made him into that kind of character. I will explain also in my next book, which is called The Invisible Master, his relationship with the invisible world and why he's so important for this historical moment we are living of turmoil, which is for the Christian, the apocalypse. The book of Revelation talks about it. We are living unprecedented times. And I've been attacked very much by his followers, by his Ordo Templi Orientis. They threatened my publisher even before I published my trilogy in the US. They called Brad Olsen, who is my publisher, saying to him, because one of them, between brackets, one of them is also one of the authors who publishes with my own publisher. Milo Duquette.
Yeah.
But I'm not scared of these people. And I'm not scared. And I said to my publisher, you have to make a choice. If you want to publish my work, you have to be ready that these people will attack you. The first thing they did, they called Olsen and they said to him, Leo Zagami is insane. He was locked up in Norway, this and that. And my publisher said, actually, he wrote about this in his book. So the thing was actually, I brought out all the truths, the good truths, the bad truths, but I gave my own perspective on the events. Of course, if you are a sustainer of Aleister Crowley, a supporter of Aleister Crowley, you will not like what I say. And you will not like what I say about the Ordo Templi Orientis, which I think it's a deviant cult and is a dangerous secret society, because it's probably even more dangerous, a lot more dangerous than it was at the time of Aleister Crowley. At the time of Aleister Crowley, up until the 40s, the OTO was pretty much a little thing, but it grown together with the New Age movement in California. That's the thing, you see. Crowley left some of his most eminent students recruiting people in California. Initially, they opened even a lodge in Hollywood. And then they celebrated the Gnostic Mass there for the first time. And then they spread this new religion of Thelema like the new religion of the New Age. And you have to understand one thing about Aleister Crowley. He is born within the Theosophical Society environment. And it's actually this Theosophical Society we should be studying before then we go into the study of Aleister Crowley to understand the basis of what Crowley is coming from. So Madame Blavatsky, the relationship and the worship they had towards people like Eliphas Levi, why they then became the Ordo Templi Orientis with Aleister Crowley, became, let's say, the sect that launched modern Satanism. Then, of course, we have Anton LaVey that came with his own brand of Satanism, which was pretty much, let's say, how you say, a bit of a, in English, sorry, it's very early in the morning, so my English is not that
Are you talking about Anton LaVey?
Yeah, let's say his branch of Satanism was more of a spectacular, as we say, something that was nice entertainment. Let's say.
It seemed like he was a good guy. Where he made it seem as if this is really an enlightening teaching, and it's a good thing, you know.
Yeah, and then, of course, people didn't know the truth about Anton LaVey and the fact that behind the scenes there was some true Satanism going on, and it wasn't just as innocent as he portrayed it. And later on, we saw that the dark side of the Church of Satan with Michael Aquino coming up, because then with Aquino we have the Temple of Set. And the Temple of Set is, let's say, the emanation of something a little bit more dark than the Church of Satan. Also because with Michael Aquino, we have somebody who, let's say, works also for the government, for the CIA, the military intelligence, in programs of mind control. And it became more evident that there was something darker to it. Now we have the latest emanation of Satanism. I talk about it also in my book, which is the Satanic Temple, with the Lucian Greaves, with this kind of lobbying towards Washington, this open approach, this public approach that really wants the full-on acceptance of Satanism. So various levels of this decline of the Western initiatic system coincided then with the rise of Satanism. This is my point, is what I try to put through in my book, the recent book. But also in my trilogy, I demonstrated how we create a lot of confusion by generalizing the word Illuminati. Because Illuminati are not only the ones of Adam Weishaupt, they're not only the ones that came out of Bavaria, but it's much more. The real Illuminati, or the Illuminati in general, and what they represent, even the dark faction, were born thousands of years ago. They have a long history of ruling these mystery schools that then emanated the religions that ruled our society. And they came through the Alexandrian school, through Egypt. If we want to go even more ancient times, we can go to Atlantis, but I don't want to go all the way there. I'm just going to say that from ancient Egypt onwards, through certain mystery schools, we have arrived to where we are now. And the big problem where we are now is that these hidden and secret values of the occult elite that were, let's say, kept on the side because they didn't have to be shown to the masses. They were too perverse and dark to be shown to the masses. Now they are not scared to do that anymore. That's why they're coming out in the open, and Hollywood is becoming, of course, the Sodom and Gomorrah of ancient times, because it's evident that Hollywood is part of this whole thing. And that's why it has also a role in my book on the decline of the Western initiatic system, which is the decline of the Western initiatic system, but it's also the decline of the Western society at whole, at large.
Yeah, I remember when, I just started, I actually spoke to Lon Milo Duquette. I thought Lon was a great man, but I felt sorry for him because he was constantly having to defend Aleister Crowley. And I always asked myself, what is that like, being in a society where you have to keep defending somebody? I mean, there is a old saying, look at the fruits of somebody's labor to see everything, and then you see the video of that woman doing the spirit cooking and stuff, and you're like, what is this? This isn't I believe in the liberal arts, but is this really art? This is kind of disgusting, you know?
Well, I was friends with Romano many, many years ago when I joined the OTO at the end of the 90s, beginning of the year 2000s. I have my brief experience in the Ordo Templi Orientis. I met him several times here in Europe and participated with him at various events. And in the end, I felt like you. I felt sorry for him because he is trapped by a system, the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is nothing like it was in the origins, because in the origins it wasn't a Thelemic system, but it's also nothing like it was at the time of Aleister Crowley, because since this Grady McMurtry took over the show and, let's say, refounded the Ordo Templi Orientis and then opened up the first Grand Lodge of the Ordo Templi Orientis in the 70s, things have never really been the same. Also because they have changed certain things within the Ordo Templi Orientis, including certain rules, certain initiations, certain oaths that you used to take within the initiation to make it, of course, something that is a close emanation of this globalist liberal mindset. Now, of course, I don't agree politically, I never have, with these people in the Ordo Templi Orientis, because most of them, like Lomaro Duquette, David Scriven, Bill Hedrick, they are all liberals. They are all Democrats. And that's another big problem of our society, that in the end of the 60s, the universities have been corrupted by this liberal left-wing creed. And then, thanks to secret society like the Ordo Templi Orientis, they have imposed and they gradually managed to manifest their do what thou wilt law, and they were capable of influencing culture on many levels. On the music level, they have influenced very much the music business, as you know, from the 60s, from the time Crowley was put on the cover of Sgt. Pepper. Then you have Ozzy Osbourne with talking about Mr. Crowley, but then later on we have many, many more artists. Nowadays you even have Justin Bieber with a t-shirt of Aleister Crowley. And then we see that these people love Aleister Crowley not only because they are, let's say, enthused or they are astonished with his great philosophy, but because Aleister Crowley condones their own perversions. That's why they embrace him. That's why they embraced him in Hollywood, but also that's why they embraced him in the 60s in the so-called Pink Palace in Boston, which was a seminary run by the Catholic Church, which gave birth to a lot of pedophiles. The pedophiles in the Catholic Church are the product of this liberal mindset that has also taken over the church from 1958, when there was the first Masonic Pope, Papa Roncalli, then the other one, Papa Montini, who started, well, it was Roncalli who started, but it was Montini who really developed the Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council became the way in which they destroyed the Catholic faith, and they embraced all the liberal ideology possible and imaginable. And that's why nowadays you have a church which is, as far as possible, from true Christianity, that is embracing Islam, that is, and you will say, but what there is wrong here? Well, there is wrong because they are supposed to be the Catholic Church. But also there is another thing regarding Lomaro Duquette and people in the Ordo Templi Orientis. They are also have established a caliphate. And that's not simply a word that Crowley, they make a joke because Crowley in a letter to McMurtry, because in California, then California Caliphate. No. McMurtry was going around with, dressed up as a Muslim at the end of his life. The people within the OTO are actually practicing a form of heresy of Islam. They made it clear with the conference they had a few days ago in Las Vegas, dedicated to the Kaaba. And this David Scriven, Sabbatius, he's a lover of the Muslim faith. These people basically are closet Muslims. when I was in London once, I was invited by Lo Milo, and I ended up inviting my mother because my mother was there for dinner, and we ended up in a Moroccan restaurant where all the members of the OTO joined to eat Islamic food. And if you go deep into the study of Thelema, like I did in my book, I don't know if you read it all, but in the last chapter especially,
I'm about halfway through it, actually. I'm getting to the last part of it. So,
okay, when you go get at the end, you will find a whole chapter regarding the relationship between Thelema and Islam.
That's fascinating.
This is fascinating because, of course, I feel personally that Lo Milo, for example, is a good person, but I really feel negatively regarding the other people in charge of the order in America and in the world, because these people have taken over the copyrights of Aleister Crowley in various ways to capitalize in a very commercial way on something that is becoming also a very important religion for the Illuminati network. So they are sitting, they know that they're sitting on a gold mine, because the more this religion of Thelema and this Aleister Crowley becomes the religion of the VIPs, of the people who are running the show in Hollywood or running the music business like Jay-Z or other people, they know that they're sitting on a gold mine.
Wow.
That is the whole thing, that then when it comes also to the entities that are behind all this, because
I want to save that for after the break, because that was going to be one of my biggest next questions. The power, the real power that's behind this. We've got to go into the break. We've only got an hour left, guys, so I will do my best to get to those questions that you guys dropped into the chat room. But don't go anywhere, guys. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with Leo Zagami about the decline of the Western initiatic system. We'll be right back, guys.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Cruz and SOR.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Saturday. I am Joe Roop, host of Lighting the Void, filling in for Dave Cruz, and also producer of the Fringe.fm. Thanks for listening, guys. Don't forget, after the show tonight, check out S4 with Eric Cooper. He'll be there doing their Veterans Day show as well. Tomorrow night, Psychic Sundays with Elizabeth Anglin. And Monday, we're going to have Dave Scott back with Spaced Out Radio talking about Shadow People. Susan Fowler will be the topic Monday night with Dave Scott. That's right. Remember, Spaced Out Radio is here for you 7 nights a week now. We are here back with Leo Zagami. And just before the break, well, I think we're back live on the air. Leo, go ahead. I'll check it on my end. You just keep going.
Yes, as I was saying, there is, of course, behind the scenes always the involvement of the Jesuits. When it comes down to entities, they seem to be mastering them for hundreds of years better than any other occult society. There is somebody who I interviewed in my book said that it's very difficult to get secret societies to actually progress and live on for hundreds of years. The Jesuits instead are there, and they have been there now for 500 years in a way that no other occult order has been present. And they have managed to infiltrate the Theosophical Society after the death of Madame Blavatsky, because their intention has been to take over the Theosophical Society and the belief of the Theosophical Society, which, as you know, has become the belief prevalent in the United Nations, this synergic form of beliefs, different beliefs all together. And so the Theosophical Society needed to be taken over. So they devised a secret society called, at the time, the Universal Brotherhood. And this Universal Brotherhood managed to get interested this Charles Stafford Jones, who was the magical child of Aleister Crowley at one point, known as Frater Ashad or Akkad. And they basically, thanks to Charles Stafford Jones, managed to infiltrate the OTO and bring a lot of members of both the OTO and the Theosophical Society within the Catholic Church. And in fact, not many people know that, but Charles Stafford Jones then became a full-on Roman Catholic, and a staunch one also, undergoing baptism and confirmation into the laity of the Church. But also he became the Grand Master of the Universal Brotherhood created by the Jesuits, known as the Mahaguru. And confirming all this is two people. One is Paul Foster Case, you might know, who was the founder of the builders of the Aditum, which is another important secret society. And then also Wilfred T. Smith, who gave instead birth to that Hollywood branch of the OTO. Paul Foster Case actually accused the secret society of being inspired by the Bavarian Illuminati. So here it's not just Leo Zagami having, a tantrum and giving up just a conspiracy based on thin air. These are facts, guys, and there is history that we study. History of the secret societies is a topic which I think deserves a lot more attention and also a lot more clarity, because as you know from normal history, normal history is always made by the winners. The same happens the same happens unfortunately with secret societies. And while maybe when it comes down to traditional history, you might have, maybe a professor on the other side of the world having a theory, another one coming up with some proof and evidence, then an archaeologist makes some discovery, and the whole thing is put into discussion. When it comes down to secret societies, everything is kept completely secret. So my intention in creating this work also, like the trilogy Confessions of an Illuminati, which I will also suggest to your listeners, is a very complex subject, secret societies. But once you try to put some clarity, then you understand that they're all part of the same establishment, and that this establishment has been infiltrated by black magicians, by Satanists, and that basically in the last 200 years it has given birth to all the problems that then emanate in ordinary society. So they have managed to make Freemasonry their own little tool. The Ordo Templariensis is only one of the many sects that has infiltrated Freemasonry. But to make an example, the Ordo Templariensis has infiltrated the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite in several states in the United States. And so they have 33-degree members in several states of the United States. They even managed to convince local lodges of Freemasonry around the United States to rent their spaces so they can use them themselves for the Ordo Templariensis.
Now, there was a question earlier in the chat room where someone was asking, as far as the Jesuits go, did the Jesuits take over basically what the Templars were and turn the Templars? I think the question was like, did they basically destroy the Templars and took over that and infiltrated secret societies that way? Because it is kind of odd to me that you're talking about Catholic priests and stuff when I know for a fact that Catholics in my state in the South in America don't like Masonry at all. So it's very ironic to hear that.
Here we're not talking about only Masonry. Here we're talking also about other kinds of secret societies. Because, for example, if you read my book, the latest one, you will see that Michael Aquino and the Temple of Set, when they were accused of pedophilia, and also within the Temple of Set, they had Jesuits and ex-Jesuits involved with Michael Aquino. There is even an ex-Jesuit reported to have been in charge of little children, also involved. And then in the end, the investigation, you remember the famous investigation in the second half of the 80s against Michael Aquino. Mm. So him dismissed. I mean, he didn't get accused or anything. I mean, he got acquitted in the end. But the only one who actually got accused and was condemned was a Catholic priest. There is many times the confusion also with Freemasonry. Freemasonry is not here the problem, because these secret societies come from an Illuminist mindset, and they have infiltrated Freemasonry. So it's not really Freemasonry, the deviants here, but these secret societies that have infiltrated, and also other secret societies that have managed to gather a lot of power externally to Freemasonry, like Skull and Bones, like many others in the US, other fraternities that are equally perverted. And so the infiltration, as I said before, of the Jesuits infiltrating the Theosophical world, it's only one of the examples. But the interesting thing about the Jesuits infiltrating the Theosophical world and seeing the potential of Frate Rashad, for example, was because Frate Rashad was, as you know, a renewed Kabbalist and somebody who was very close to certain entities. He worked with evoking angelic forces, and then they don't like that. They like to have everything under control. They don't like you to be in contact with these entities independently. If you have contact with these entities, they like to be involved. That's what the Jesuits like, definitely.
Wow. Do you think that, and when, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about this with Ryan earlier, that JFK's speech when he warned about a monarch of control that was trying to do things by covert means across society before he was shot. Do you think that that's some of the same people he was talking about by chance?
Definitely, Kennedy was accusing this conspiracy. I mean, he talks about a conspiracy. He's very clear about the conspiracy he's facing. I mean, he faced this conspiracy full on, and he lost his life for it. So, I mean, he warned the people, but warning people about a conspiracy which is so entrenched in the system. I mean, this deep state goes far beyond the left and the right. they manipulate, of course, they have in their complete control the Democratic Party, but they also control parts of the Republican Party. That's why President Donald J. Trump is impossibilitated and can't figure out how to really work out things, because every time they try to stop him, because there is people within his own party who do that. And they're all part of the same military industrial complex that feeds into this perversion that after is emanated from Hollywood. One great thing about Donald J. Trump in power is that Hollywood finally is starting to be attacked full on, because that's really where the great perverts are, feeding the masses with their propaganda. But you see, there is a big difference here between, and you can see it very clearly in the polls. When Ronald Reagan was successful, the polls were in his favor, like something like 65 to 70%. Okay, after being elected and after being in power for a few years, he was really popular. Donald J. Trump is 35%. Now the difference stands in the fact that Reagan had completely under his control Hollywood. Reagan was a member of the Bohemian Grove. He was himself involved in perverted activities that are undergone every year by the Republican elite within the forest of the Bohemian Grove, which is part of the Bohemian Club, which, as you know, resides in San Francisco.
Right.
So the problem here, really, we have to really be honest here, is coherence and less hypocrisy. Okay, you like a liberal way of life? You like to go with minors? You like to do drugs? You like to do this and that? Okay, then you have to be honest about it. And that's what they're trying to filtrate gradually towards the public, because they know that they can only get away with murder if they make that murder acceptable to the public. Now, they can only get away with pedophilia if they make it acceptable to the public. But it's well known that Reagan was involved with prostitutes and stuff within the Bohemian Grove.
In your book,
it's well known.
Right,
huh?
right.
Sorry.
But in your book, you talk about, and this was what was fascinating to me.
And all these, let's say, all these heads of state, they all like little girls. They are all into pedophilia. They're all a bunch of perverts, because nobody has ever stopped them.
Right, because they're in positions of power, and they're working on people's dreams. Especially, it was very sad to hear about Corey Feldman and what was going on there, because they had to go through this one guy to get to follow their dreams. You know, they work hard all their life to get to where they want to be an actor in the movies, to follow the American dream, and they get up there with these people that say, sure, no problem, you know, we can get you into the big screen, but you got to do us a favor. It's very sick.
I mean, it's very sick that you have a person who was very big in the 70s and 80s in Hollywood, like Steven Spielberg, who made movies that most of the time casted as characters central to his whole movie, kids. Because Steven Spielberg is one of them.
Wow.
So it's sick that all this is going on, and that, of course, now that, because the thing is this, you know, the liberals in Hollywood, the Satanists in Hollywood, because let's call them, you know, Kennedy said, for we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Right.
That's what Kennedy said. And Kennedy was killed to then be glorified by the people who killed him. That's the big thing, you see, that you learn in Freemasonry when you are into the third degree. The master Hiram Abif is killed and then is brought back to life. So it's a bit like the guy who, I don't remember exactly his name. I think he was Norwegian. He was the first Secretary General of the United Nations. I think his name was Hams or something like that. He ended up being killed, thrown out of a plane and then murdered, actually shot after being thrown out of the ring. But he was the one who was responsible for that famous room you have in the United Nations, that meditation room that is used by the disciples of the New World Order for their one world religion. I don't know if you ever saw that meditation room in the United Nations ever. Well, he was the one who created it, but then he was also the one who was killed. So you create something and then you are killed to then be glorified. I mean, it sounds like a strange story, but it sounds like something I had 2,000 years ago, but somebody was killed and then was brought back to life and glorified.
Yeah, it does. And, there's, there's people in the chat room saying, that this is a negative, they're going, well, this is a negative, I guess, topic or whatever. It's bad energy. Well, here's the thing. If this is really happening, then we need
Listen, guys, if you want to dig your hands into your heads into the sand, you don't want to think about these negative topics. You want to just think that everything is great, that the world is going great, and that we are free. First of all, that we are free when we are not free, because we are completely not free. Controlled from the moment of birth, you're giving a number to the moment you die. You are basically in the hands of people that want you to think that you're free. Especially here in the West. In other societies, they already have, take away this hypocrisy and this problem by, just saying, okay, this is a dictatorship. Here we have the head of the state is a king or a queen or a head of a religion. But in our society here in the West, that we are claiming we are so democratic, to live in a society like this and then, finally discover that all our idols on TV, that all the music we listen and everything else is in the hands of a bunch of pedophiles and the hands of a bunch of perverts and not doing anything about it. Well, I mean, then you are in league with evil, and you deserve that evil. That's it. So
you've talked to police officers and investigators in your country that have actually caught some of these people. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I collaborate with police forces and with people investigating sectarian activities. You see, sectarian activities are something that are typical to every form of society. Lately, we had that actress from Smallville, herself, Alison Mack, caught into a new scandal about this sect which is apparently called DOS and emanates from this group created by Kate Rainier. And this sect is very dangerous, and the women in the sect get marked with the initials of the founder, and they're brainwashed, and they have some really dark approach to life, and at the same time, he pushes them to not eat more than 500 to 800 calories a day. Why do people do this? Why did people join Charles Manson's sect? Why do people join this sect? That's the big thing, the big question that these people should give to themselves, Why do they do that?
Yeah, and when because they ask his followers, I remember the reporters talking to Charles Manson's followers, and they were like almost treated him like he was the Messiah or something. He's such a beautiful person. He's so intelligent and liberating, and you're thinking, liberating to what extent though? To where you're going to harm other people? That's not liberating. It's disgusting,
Absolutely. But let's go back to the question you asked me at the beginning after the break about these entities behind the scene who are driving all this. Entities that are, of course, vampiric entities. You see, when we have, first of all, the concept that leads all these groups is the concept of the egregor, the form thought that is put together by these groups. Now, they like to feed this egregor into a bigger, into their own entity of choice that can be a positive one. Like in the case of me and you and other people who maybe, meet one day and say, we are all Christian, let's make a prayer together. Let's make a common prayer to make humanity better. That's a positive thing. We have created a positive egregor that day. But most of these people feed into vampiric egregores, because they are absorbed by a demonic reality in which if you give, you take. So what do you give? That's the thing. What do you give? And when you go and study Hollywood and you see these people have the means to basically obtain whatever they want. So at the end, they want to obtain even more. So what do they want to give? They want to give their own semen. They want to give their own blood. At that point, they want to give maybe a sacrifice. It can be an animal sacrifice. Then it can be a human sacrifice. Right. And then it degenerates, or this gradually it degenerates. We have to focus on the fact that Aleister Crowley is not only the guy connected to the Ordo Templi Orientis, which is, at the end of the day, a minus form of secrets. I mean, they count maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people around the world, these people. They are not really, maybe nowadays with the success they had in the last 10 years, they've grown up to 4,000 or 5,000. But the 4,000 or 5,000 chosen among certain people, especially because they can influence culture. Then, that's one secret society. But then you have many others that have sprung out of Crowleyanity. You have Scientology, which is born out of Crowleyanity.
That's a crazy. That is a cult, if I've ever seen one. Scientology. I'm sorry if you're a Scientologist out there. I apologize, but it's just like everything else. It all starts out real beautiful and liberating, but if you read the papers in the top degrees of Scientology, it's a crazy, crazy thing. You know.
Absolutely, and so. If I have to make a list of the things that were born out of the negativity of Crowley, we have Scientology, we have the Church of Satan, we have the Temple of Set, we have probably a list that goes into the dozens, maybe even the hundreds of groups, sects, secret societies that have emanated from this philosophy of do what thou wilt. And dominated by an entity that transmitted this book of the law in 1904, which was an alien entity, an alien interdimensional entity, a preterhuman entity that communicated with Crowley through channeling of his wife, then Rose Kelly, and the possibility for him to receive these instructions for a new form of society. That, of course, is a diabolical and satanic form of society. But also, he did a series of rituals like the one he did in Algeria in 1909 to open the gates of hell. With Victor Neuburg, he went to Algeria. Then, he opened the gates of hell. Then he went to America to try to convince people to accept Telema, and he kind of... buried there the seeds of something that will grow much later, but then growed up in the Beat generation. People like William Burroughs, people like Brian Geisen were totally entrenched with Crowleyanity. And then we have the 60s, and then a lot of people got confused and brainwashed even further by gurus from the East that were simply manipulators working for demonic forces just as bad as the one like Crowley. And Crowley himself sent some of his disciples to India to get initiated to witchcraft so they could come back after in the 70s and form groups like Amucos, which I talk about in volume 2 of my Confession extensively, which is mixing basically elements of Indian witchcraft and Crowleyanity. So all this basically is part of this setup that has destroyed the Western initiatic system, where we need to bring back some awareness, and we really need to be honest with ourselves. So,
I've always said
dishonesty, unfortunately, is missing.
That's correct. And I've always said and talked about on my show on Lighting the Void that there seems to be a war going on inside of the Western initiatic system, and people would say, what are you talking about, a war? I thought they were all the same people and all the same thing, and I never could quite explain it. And I remember a European society of Egyptian Freemasonry, which I was very interested in looking into, because Egyptian Freemasonry was something very interesting to me in my studies. And I started researching societies and groups, and there was this one society that called themselves vampires, and they had members all over the world, and I was like, vampires? Why would I want to be a vampire? So I didn't quite understand that at all. So I backed away from it,
Vampires exist, psychic vampires more than even traditional vampires, but vampires are a reality that was actually coded in a secret society born at the time of Aleister Crowley that actually related very intensively with Aleister Crowley, called the Fraternitas Saturni, that nowadays in Germany is run by the same people who run the Ordo Templi Orientis in Germany. So the Fraternitas Saturni is a secret society which is unusual. People tend to focus. This is another of those secret societies sprung out of Aleister Crowley. The Brotherhood of Satan is a magical order founded in 1926 by this guy called Eugene Grosch, aka Gregor Gregorius. And the way they work is to work. They have a system which is made out of 33 degrees and so on. So they're basically, a lot of them were Masons, so they kind of went on absorbing a little bit of what is the Masonic way of distributing the hierarchy. But in reality, the Fraternitas Saturni is another perverted group of people that follow a very alienating kind of cult. And it was then reactivated in Eastern Germany later on, and there existed and still exist probably several lodges of it, but already in the 50s there were several lodges in Dusseldorf, Hamburg, Frankfurt, Stuttgart, and a Grand Lodge in Berlin. Why I'm talking so much about this group is because their development is part of a study I've done on psychic defense from groups like this that are really based on the concept of absorbing the energies of their apprentice, of their neophytes. And this was what happens usually in a lot of sectarian activities, no? But in the Fraternitas Saturni is done in a kind of, you are aware of this. And so you are aware of the fact that there is this vampirism going on with the egregore of their lodge, which is known usually as the Gothos. So I've spent a lot of time in studying the Fraternitas Saturni, and I came down to the conclusion that they are just another satanic group, like most of them. I mean, people say, but Satanism is a concept that you link with Christianity because then you have to believe in Satan to believe in Satanism.
Right, I was just going to ask you about that.
And all these people, are pagans, so they think that they can't be Satanists because, of course, they don't believe in Satan. Well, let me tell you that one of the biggest tricks of Satan is to not let him believe in that he exists. That is a very renewed saying, no? And so I think that we have to understand that all these groups that are part of this New Age movement, because the New Age movement sprang out of the Theosophical Society, and then it developed also thanks to something which has been, let's say, an experiment of certain intelligence agencies. Because up until, let's say, the Second World War, I don't know if still now as much, but up until the Second World War, a lot of the intelligence agencies recruited people, especially because they were part of these secret societies and that were a mean to transmit information in a very reserved manner. Because when you're part of these secret societies, people who are not part of this reality, rarely they come close to you or they want to know more because they're scared. So once you are scared, then you can work more on other things. Like Aleister Crowley. Okay, everybody focuses on his magical side, but only lately They have focused instead on his intelligence aspect, on the fact that he was very active in espionage activities. So we had that book by Richard Spence, which is Agent 666. And this book basically that came out by Richard Spence, who is an archivist for the intelligence world, so he's not just a writer of the Crowellian topic, has put a lot of people, a lot of information in front of them that confirmed that Aleister Crowley was involved with espionage activities. And the same with Tobias Cherton, who also did another book based on this. So finally, people know that Aleister Crowley was also British intelligence asset. And that British intelligence, as you know, has been working on establishing this new world order is not a secret, because they are part of this big plan. So Crowley was used as a tool. And
right. Do you think that, well, when I read books on Masonry, like, say, from Manly P. Hall or Mackey or even
a lot of people will not know that the left wing worldwide and in all the universities of the world either is run by the Jesuits or either is run by the MI6, by the SIS, the English intelligence. These are the ones, actually, the Queen of England runs communism.
Right. That's right.
I mean, it seems crazy. It seems but this is the truth. And when you see how hypocrite these people are, and you see that they have Panama money, they have they are like Bono Box. They say, oh, you have to pay your taxes, and then after they have all their money in one of the tax paradises, because they are hypocrites. That's what they are.
Right. Well, you got that right. And I'm not a big political person. I have problems with both Republicans and Democrats. I have a problem with politics as a whole, because I think the whole system has been desecrated by a lot of manipulation. But however, when I look on YouTube and I see a couple of witches invoking Babylon and binding Donald Trump and the American people, they learned whatever they're doing, which was a very weird looking ritual. It didn't even look right to me what they were doing, but what they're attempting to do is bind people that support the president. Now, look, I'm not a big Donald Trump fan. I'm not even that big of a political guy. But anytime you start trying to bind people, that can't be good. And you want to say that do what thou wilt is the whole of the law, but yet you're doing binding rituals. That's a little bit hypocritical too, don't you think?
Absolutely. But you see, what we have noticed from these latest elections is that the mondialist side, the one that is financed by George Soros, who has just put 18 billion, who has just financed with 75% of his own money the future of the New World Order, the one that, of course, is behind the Clinton Foundation, behind everything done by the Democrats, but also behind the Bushes that are no better. So, I mean, you're talking about people like McCain, who is on the payroll of George Soros. You're talking about many other Republicans who are on the payroll of George Soros. Now, one thing I like about Donald J. Trump, he's a rich man. You can't buy him. And that's why I trust only a guy who can't be bought out in this society. Because I know myself that they tried to do that, to buy me out, offering me money.
Really?
But I didn't accept, many times. But I never accepted it because I have, my ideology. I have my aristocratic background that puts me, let's say, in a way, I don't like to sell off. I will feel really diminished as a person if I ever sold off my soul for money. So I never did that. But the majority of people around me during the course of the years in various activities have always sold themselves to the devil. And they have done it for little money, big money, depending on. But when I saw Donald J. Trump, a guy who has billions, a guy who has really billions, a guy who you can't buy because simply it will cost you too much money to buy Donald J. Trump. And he will probably not accept because he has already everything. Well, then I said, this guy is the guy for me. He's the guy I can trust in this political arena, simply because they can't buy him out. Now, the only way they can stop Trump will be with a gun at his head and saying, maybe, we're going to kill your daughter, maybe, or something terrible like that. Maybe, in that case, maybe he will stop. But Donald J. Trump is a guy who is good for your country because you can't buy him out. Everybody else is on sale. And that guy, Michael Hughes, who's been doing those binding rituals, you heard about him?
Yes, I have.
Well, everybody thinks he's a witch. Everybody thinks he's a pagan. Everybody thinks he's a chaos magician because he goes around with the symbol of chaos magic. But very few people know he's a Jesuit stooge, and he's a Freemason and a member not only of the York Rite, but also of the American emanation of the Society Rosicruciana in Anglia. So he basically is under the Queen of England. So he is just another tool of the elite to try to gather magical strength against Donald J. Trump, who is for them a big threat. I really...
So this rabbit hole goes much deeper than any of us really know. I mean, you guys need to get his book. I mean, if you doubt, I've had my own doubts about all this. I always thought it was sensationalism and fear mongering and all this kind of stuff. And, I think that plays a role in this as well. But I think if you guys want to, let's just say this, if you want to doubt Leo's knowledge about the mystery schools and whoever's in the mysteries, and in your latest book, you reveal quite a bit of secret teachings in that book before you even get into the story of the evil that's going on inside of the schools. So you really go in great detail about the teachings to let us know just how it's being manipulated. Were you worried about any backlash from that stuff that you're revealing?
Well, to follow all my work, you see, it's great that you have pointed out on my latest book and on the teachings that I reveal in my latest book, because I really wanted people to understand that this Illuminati network and these secret societies have teach their members techniques that supposedly make them stronger than us. So, if we want to fight them, we need to be as strong as them and to learn these techniques, to learn what are their tricks and so on. But in my trilogy, which I suggest you go and read, which is very important, the volume 1, 2, and 3, you will see how I describe, first of all, how this whole world is divided, the secret societies, the various ones, and so on, and also their teachings right from the beginning. And of course, I got a backlash from all this. From the moment I started publishing my books in Japan, I started to have pressure on me to not make public these books in the West. And then the Vatican even called me up and offered me money at one point before I was about to publish them in Italy. And I write about this in volume 3 of my Confessions. And I refused that money. But it's not that I wrote on my book the name, the surname, and the people involved, the times and everything. So, just to make it clear, in Italy, you can't write things like this if they're not true, because you end up in jail. We are number 77 in the freedom of press in Italy. So you have to triple, quadruple check every source of information. One thing I'm very annoyed lately is the attempt of censoring volume 2 of my Confessions. Because the Brotherhood of Satan, who I've managed to bring down with my work, because I exposed them like nobody else has done before me in volume 2 of my Confessions. I don't know if you ever heard of the Brotherhood of Satan.
No, but I have heard of, in your book, where you go into the discussion of the Order of the Nine Angles. And
and also in my new book, I talk about the fact that we brought down the Brotherhood of Satan.
Yeah. Yes, I did read that part, as a matter of fact, because I remember reading it and looking at the screenshots. So, yes, I remember that.
But there is much more to it, because in volume 2 of my Confessions, I make the names of all the people involved, And one of the people involved in particular has been trying to put a lot of pressure on my publisher to censor parts of the book. And what I have discovered lately has been very interesting regarding the Brotherhood of Satan. You heard about a guy called another whistleblower called William Schoblen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you say his name right. If I have
no, that's right. I'm pretty
name.
Sure that's right. I can't say it very well myself.
Okay, now because sometimes I get a little bit confused. Okay, he had made some revelations in his books years ago, and I went and checked out on his books and stuff, and I was a little bit skeptical until the name of this guy was confirmed. He talked about, of course, he talked about how he entered and joined the Brotherhood of Satan, and he mentioned a guy called Orion that later on, apparently, in a book which has been released called Creatures of the Night, which I suggest you go and check out. There's an interesting book by a guy called Gregory L. Rees. Well, in this book, he confirms the identity of Orion as David DePaul, this guy who is the founder, or at least somebody who is also known with another initiatic name. I think it's known as Druidian Pendragon or something like that. And the thing that I discovered by studying also his work, comparing also with when I wrote Confessions Volume 2, I had never read or heard the interview that William Schoblen did in regards to this Brotherhood of Satan. But once I compared the two things and I saw what they were doing, it was even more shocking for me to have ulterior confirmations. But the thing is that now they are really worried about me having put their names and also their faces during the rituals. There is a guy called Kay Schaffer, who is a Freemason, who is going crazy about the fact I have exposed him. This guy has gone for years, even claimed he was Grand Master of the Supreme Council Bavarian Illuminati in the USA, and so on. But these people are involved, from what is said actually by Schoblen himself, in ritual murder and in killing children and sacrificing them and so on. And I was bringing in my book only a testimony of, in volume 2, a testimony given me by a policeman in New York about their activities. So I was not reporting from my own experience.
That's scary, man.
Later on, I had this confirmation that these people are really even worse than what I thought. And so I don't understand how they can put pressure on my publisher to censor them, to take off their mentions of their names and the stuff from the book. And so I suggested for people who are listening to go and read volume 2 of my Confessions. Also, up until very recently, I didn't have a positive perspective of the Golden Dawn until I met David Griffin.
Right.
Because the Golden Dawn, as you know, is run worldwide by these Cicero guys. At least another branch.
Yeah.
Cicero and his wife, I think. No, they have a very big reality. Sandra Tabata Cicero and this Charles Cicero. They then went into the English occult scene, and they formed an alliance with certain factions of English Freemasonry and formed a New Rosicrucian Society that they have been working on for the last few years. That goes around Cap.
It's called the SRIA, right? I believe I did see that, their website on that.
Well, the SRIA was where some of their members were recruited from. They actually created a new thing called, which I talked about in volume 1 of my Confessions, and all this actually sprang out of also my own investigation, because at the time I was a member of the United Grand Lodge of England, and I became involved in an investigation into Satanism in the SRIA. And then in the end, I found the involvement of these OTO people within the SRIA, because all these secret societies are infiltrated by the Ordo Templi Orientis and the members of the Ordo Templi Orientis. So it's quite sad, but that's the reality of how things are, unfortunately, these days. And I've pointed out that there were really senior members of English Freemasonry, like Michael Buckley and like Robert Gilbert, originally involved with the SRIA, that made this alliance. And apparently there is even John Paternoster and all these people, they're all involved with the dark side of the occult, because they are all embracing Crowellian values that are promoted from a bookshop in London, which is in the hands of people connected to the Ordo Templi Orientis. This bookshop is called Atlantis Bookshop, which is the oldest bookshop in London. And so this whole, I never had a positive idea of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn with Cicero.
Until you met David.
Until I met David, because also another thing, a few years back, when I was living in Scandinavia, David was also living in Scandinavia, so I heard about him from common friends. At the time, I was actually still involved in the Ordo Templi Orientis, and I was still involved in the dark side. And I heard about David, and they were talking to me about David, saying, oh, this guy, he is actually a Thelemite, he believes Aleister Crowley, he is actually one of ours, blah, blah, blah. So I never really wanted...
too, though, quite a bit, Leo, just to let you know. He has...
but later on, but the thing is that I pleasantly discovered that this wasn't true. So up until my recent books in trilogy and stuff, I always had very skeptic idea and very critical about the Golden Dawn, because it was a system that had been taken over by these people who are obviously people who are mondialist, people who are also connected with you see, these Cicero guys, for example, are connected with that Michael Hughes guy. See? So they're all interconnected, these people. And the Order of the Rose and the Cross that they have created as a schismatic order, and they meet in all these castles and so on, and they do all these rituals with the elite, and they're trying to run the show in a way that they say they are the good side, and that they will save the world. And their manifesto is quite shocking, because I was myself very shocked when I read their manifesto a few years back. And then they said that part of the manifesto had been manipulated. But they were saying basically that they had, we in the manifesto they wrote, we believe in the inevitability of the end of the world and the second coming of Christ. This was one of their main statements, made also by Cicero, Buckley, Gilbert. Then they went on saying that this wasn't true. The statement was apparently made on the 6th of June, 2007.
Well, I will say this.
What can I say?
I mean, we've only got a couple of minutes left here, Leo. The growing inspiration for learning the mysteries, I can tell you firsthand that I know some people are selling the mystery schools that don't know anything about them. They think they understand alchemy, and they're throwing around that phrase to make $1. And et cetera, et cetera. I would ask you this final question before we get out of here: is what would you tell anyone in our society that is interested in getting into Freemasonry, the OTO, or anything? Do you have a message that you want to tell those people before they do something like that?
Well, as you know from my book, I have tried to write this latest book, which is called The Decline of the Western Initiatic System and the Rise of Satanism in a Society, to actually warn certain people in joining certain groups, also because they may have an idea which is a wrong perception of these groups in their head. And so they end up being either they think, okay, I wasted my time, or either they get involved with the dark side, or at times even without knowing it, they are drawn into situations that they were contrary to their original beliefs. So I will suggest that Freemasonry today, in the United States of America, there is some good elements, especially within the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. There is definitely no good elements in the York Rite, because the York Rite is secretly manipulated and driven by the Jesuits and by the Catholic Church. And so there already different factions at work, but also parts of the ancient and accepted accepted Scottish Rite are unfortunately also traditionally linked to the Jesuits, especially in Latin countries. So Freemasonry is something that you really have to go in knowing what you're getting in, and especially regarding Freemasonry, you have to understand that a lot of it depends on the people you have in your own lodge, if they're good people. Because if you have your own local lodge, good people, then that's fine. But you only need one occultist, one black magician to pollute esoterically and psychically the whole environment.
Thank you, Leo, so much for the message and for coming on with us, spending your time with us here at Spaced Out Radio from all the way from Rome. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, man. I hope one day we can do it again, maybe when you come out with your new book. Can you tell everybody how to find your website?
Well, my website is www.leozagami.com. My publisher is CCC Publishing, but also my new book is out on Cursum Perficio on Amazon, which is the Decline of the Western Initiatic System, The Rise of Satanism in our Society. And I hope that you find the Christian ways to embrace these mysteries without getting into witchcraft and the dark side. Keep always the dark side and the devils and the demons away from your life.
There you go, folks. Great interview. Leo Zagami at leozagami.com. Go check out his new book and go get it. Remember, we'll be seeing you here in less than 24 hours again. Spaced Out Radio's for you 7 nights a week. Elizabeth Anglin tomorrow night. We'll see you guys later. Thanks for letting me do this, guys. It was fun.